Good morning. Happy St. Patrick's Day to one and all. You're listening to Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. This is Radio Westchester, your radio station at the train station. And it is, wow, it's 41 degrees on its way to about 55 today, 51 maybe to 55. Right now it's overcast. We've had a little drizzle this morning on this March 17th. 2020. Happy St. Patrick's Day to one and all. We'll be right back with all of the weather for you in just a few minutes. First, or rather, just a minute, let's go over the headlines. The coronavirus is obviously the topic of the day. George Latimer, the county executive, declared a state of emergency in Westchester County. The Mount Vernon mayor asked for a curfew late yesterday, and closes businesses during the state of emergency. We'll tell you what high-risk businesses are involved in that. And there will be, no doubt, a curfew. And there's a quarantine in Mount Vernon at a rehab facility there where some folks may have tested positive for the virus. And 2 employees at the Postal Service here in Westchester have tested positive. They're saying it will not hurt the postal delivery. But then again, it couldn't get any worse. And of course, the primaries, and one of them was canceled tonight. There will be a few others that go forward. So stay with us. We have an awful lot of news for you this morning. Let's take a look at the weather. The weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.org. And as we said, it's 41 night now. It's going to get up to about 51, maybe 55 today after the morning showers, and it looks like they're trying to ebb away. It'll give way to increasing sunshine. Tonight, though, clear skies, the temperature down to 34, but into Wednesday, mostly sunny, maybe a drizzle or two, a high into 53 degrees. Rain early Thursday, though, then remaining cloudy, getting up to 54. Friday, get this, mostly cloudy with scattered showers. The high will be 70 degrees, and we'll get down to 48 at night. If you care that much, you want to look ahead to Saturday, we're talking about partly sunny skies and breezy. The high will be 52. And the bottom of the hour is supported by Plug-in Virtual Reality, Dominic's Fine Cigars, Aging Issues Management. They have shows with us, as you know, the law firm of Pena and Khan. And now joining us this week, and we're going to be reaching out to other restaurants today, our friends at the Beachmont Tavern. It is 6:38. Welcome to the program. Let's get right into the news. Now, we had George Latimer on yesterday morning, so if you're a regular listener to the program, no surprise this, but nonetheless, yesterday at 3 o'clock, Westchester County Executive George Latimer declared a state of emergency as the fight to slow the coronavirus outbreak grinds into most aspects of daily life. Latimer's emergency declaration and a related executive order will shut down all public and private schools in the county for a minimum of 2 weeks starting tomorrow. Wednesday has 44 public schools, so Westchester does, and the majority decided to close on their own, at any rate, prior to the order. The declaration follows an order by the state of New York, New Jersey, states rather of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut that will close casinos, gyms, movie theaters, and limit bars and restaurants to delivery and takeout. All public functions of 50 people or more are on hold to maximize social distancing. And there are now some, they're telling us after this announcement, this Sharita Ambler, County Commissioner of Health, said efforts like the closure of schools should be taken seriously to reduce the risk of exposure. Now, Latimer said the county is looking at sites that serve as emergency, though that can serve as emergency medical areas in the face of a surge of needed hospital beds. And potential sites named by the county executive include Doral Arrowwood, a recently closed hotel and conference center in Rybrook, the long-shuttered United Hospital in Portchester, and the former College of New Rochelle. And he did mention the county-owned parks, including Rye Playland, could potentially be used as additional drive-thrus. As you know, here in New Rochelle, we already have the county park, Glen Island, being used for that purpose. And it was sort of quiet on the coronavirus front for a while, but not anymore. The mayor of Mount Vernon, who will be with us in the 8 o'clock hour, Sean Patterson Howard, said she believes Mount Vernon is extremely vulnerable for the spread of COVID, and she has asked for curfew and closing businesses during the state of emergency. She's asking Mount Vernon residents to follow a curfew and stay inside their home from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., including those who are traveling for work. The curfew is not mandatory at this time. Personal care businesses such as beauty salons, makeup studios, barbershops, etc. are ordered to close starting tomorrow. She's also recommending all businesses that are not grocery stores, pharmacies, banks, and gas stations to close their stores by 5 p.m., as opposed to, let's say, New Jersey, where it is at 8 p.m. Restaurants may remain open and offer takeout and delivery options only as recommended by Governor Cuomo. City Hall will be running a limited service, but all essential service departments will work. And that is where it is. And we got this story both out of LOHUD and News 12 today, the details of it, and we thank both of those outlets. Now, News 12 is also reporting a confirmed case of coronavirus has prompted a partial quarantine of the Westchester Center for Rehabilitation and Nursing. They are in Mount Vernon. The administration director of the center confirmed the case and said they are now quarantining the north side of the building for safety precautions. News 12, again, who gave us the story, has been told by employees at the center who want to remain anonymous that there's been no gloves or mask for either the workers or the patients and that they haven't taken any precautions. They also said it took over a week to receive the results of the coronavirus test. And sure enough, we'll ask the mayor about that when she calls us in about 8:35 and see what can be done about that. Now, you know, we have bad mail service, or for about a year or two now, we've had relatively bad mail service here in Westchester, despite the pleas of politicians all the way up to our United States senators with only little relief. Now news comes that 2 potential employees in Wise Plains who are postal workers tested positive for the illness and prompted the Postal Service to assure residents that there is no evidence that the coronavirus can be spread through the mail, so don't worry about that. The 2 employees, because there's a second one now who speculated, who work at the Westchester Processing and Distribution Center, pardon me, will not be back at work until medically cleared. The Postal Service believes exposure risk for other employees is low based on guidance from the Centers for Disease Control. It is 6:44. A little coffee gets the the frog put back to sleep. Now, here's a case, talking about things not working out. A patient says that she was turned away from the Orange Regional Medical Center multiple times, despite being told by the Department of Health that she met requirements for coronavirus testing. One Candace Scott says that this goes all the way back to March 1st, by the way. She had a fever of 101 degrees, a dry, hard cough, and achy muscles. 12 days earlier, Scott had returned home with her family to Pine Bush from 2 major airports, LAX in Los Angeles and John F. Kennedy International Airport. Scott says Orange County Health Department told her she met criteria for testing and to go back to the testing sites. Once again, she was turned away. And we expect more ramifications coming from that story. And as we move forward, it's 6:45. We'll have to go ahead in a few minutes with another report of the weather for you. But Canada is shutting its borders to all travelers who are not citizens or permanent residents to help stem the spread of the coronavirus. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced this yesterday. Exceptions will be made for flight crews, diplomats, and immediate family members of Canadians. As well at this time, American citizens, Trudeau said, outside of his residence where he's self-isolating. That's his wife, you know, who was tested positive. She's saying, other than we can let United States folks in. So that's what we know so far. Also, down in New York City, things always interesting there regarding the virus concerns. New York City's homeless shelters are breeding grounds for coronavirus because of a lack of protective gear and sanitary procedures, so claims the head of the union representing shelter security guards. She said, and I quote, "I believe the shelters have become breeding grounds for the coronavirus." And they are very, very concerned about that. Now, you notice in the last two of the last three stories, the common denominator was, where are the masks? Where are the wipes? Where are the tools that are needed for this? Meanwhile, I love when something comes from the school's chancellor. And he always has agendas that it takes you a few hours to figure out after he opens his mouth. Let's see what he has to say this morning. With just 2 days to spare, the City Department of Education scrambled yesterday to marshal a remote learning plan for more than 1 million city students in the wake of Mayor de Blasio's school shutdown. It won't be easy, the union chief said. He's Michael Mulgrew. He admitted on Monday it won't be perfect, but we need to get this done. The new at-home instruction process is scheduled to begin next Monday. Now, they have the teachers in. We had one in here yesterday. They've been called in for 3 days to go over how they will conduct this distance learning. And I get a lot of mixed signals. I got a lot of texts and emails yesterday. Some people saying it'll work fine, others saying it won't work fine, and still others saying these kids aren't going to do any work because their parents aren't going to keep them to a schedule, which was a part of it. Now, the DOE acknowledged, that's the Department of Education, acknowledged that the levels of preparedness for the unprecedented undertaking vary wildly across the city's 1,800 schools, and it is partnering with Apple and other companies to purchase bulk devices to fill the void. But we shall see how that goes. It is 6:48, and it is time once again for us to take a look at the weather. And as you know, the weather is brought to you exclusively by our friends at United Hebrew of New Rochelle, one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.org. And it is 41 and overcast outside. There was some rain earlier this morning that seems to have dissipated, but you still may have a few more sprinkles. Very light rain, though, thin rain. We will get up to 51 or so today. We always get a few more degrees than the officials tell us, but after the morning showers, increasing sunshine this afternoon. Tonight, clear skies. The temperature will be 34. The wind out of the northwest 5 to 10 on. It's a Wednesday. Mostly sunny skies tomorrow. The high will be 53. The overnight low 39. Thursday, more rain. I'm sorry. Then remaining cloudy. The high 54. The overnight low only 48 because Friday, or I should say not only, it's not too bad. Friday, mostly cloudy with scattered showers, but the high will be 70 degrees. So that's something to look forward to. Welcome to the program. Before we get to more general news and other things that are going on, something yesterday kind of just flew at me. And it has to do with the fact that we were trying to figure out, at least I was, again, it's always hard to dig through these agendas. Why was the New Rochelle school district so slow to close the schools, when pretty much that's what everyone was saying that they ought to do? Why was New York really lagging, totally behind, even with the support of the mayor in doing the same? And two things came to mind. One of them, a sign of the true economic disparities in our culture. But the other one, a little more troubling. The other one was that, I guess, thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of students. We have a much more a smaller size here in New Rochelle, but I'm looking at New York City first. Tens of thousands of students, perhaps, if they don't go to school, they don't eat. And they rely on breakfast and lunch at school, which is morally a wonderful thing to do, but we're going to talk about that in a minute. And here in New Rochelle, again, a microcosm of that, but the same thing. Now, I hate to go here, but I have to. I am sure that that is not something that the powers that be really wanted to have to talk about, because it raises a question, and it raises a question, and this coming from still probably person skews as a liberal, but nonetheless, it raises a question. Why do so many kids have to have lunch and dinner at school, or even on the public dole, which I don't have a problem with this. Don't get me wrong. The safety net's an important thing, and we don't want kids hungry in school. But I had suggested one day on these microphones to some school senior representatives a few years ago, and I said, gee, why don't we just give more food stamps, if that's it, or more money in some way, or some card, the way the food stamps work. Why don't we give the parents more money so that we also don't enable the parents to slack on their responsibilities? And you'd think that I was Joseph Mengele, ready to do torture in our schools. That's a good question, and I'm not suggesting we shouldn't do it. I'm asking why it's so necessary, because what it also touches on, in my humble view, is the need and the obfuscation that takes place when there's violence in schools and when kids don't have good study habits, or when they're constantly late or miss a lot of school. Some kids. But generally speaking, it's a lot of the same kids. When they're late for school, or when they tell teachers that they're expletives. One teacher testified on these airways that person gets called a B word every day. Or when kids are questioned in hallways, the kinds of things that they say to teachers. Or worse still, when they do act out in a bad way, we have all of these programs that talk about it would be, and I don't know why they say this, biased and racist, to discipline them. And so one of the things that begins to form, if you use your brain, if you think about it, and you're just not driven by either right or left agendas, you begin to realize that we have a societal problem. We have a problem of economics, and that is a big problem, and we have a growing disparity between those of lesser means and those up there in the 1%. Huge, and that is a huge part of this. And so people of goodwill don't want these kids starving. I get it. Also, people of goodwill see people who are misfortunate and don't, when I say misfortunate economically, also in the grips of cultural and social I'm going to call it deprivation. But now I still remember being at a rally, not a rally, but after the death of Valerie Schwab. I still remember being in an auditorium of 1,000 people where a group, and I think Neuro was the group, well-intentioned, sure. And the group gets up and they start talking about, if you mention economics, if you mention culture, if you mention any of these things, you're a racist. Oh boy, now it finally hits me. And so the fact that we have to have so many lunches in schools and lunches is a shame on the American society and the society of cities per se, where people, I'm not going to use the term inner city because that skews a larger issue and it takes the eye off the ball a bit. But in densely populated areas where people of multiple means live, it seems that our society is failing. And yes, in the inner city, if we're honest with it, the culture of violence, the thought that it's okay to be late, that's why some of these things that they translate, when you looked at what Carranza sent out to his teachers last year, Carranza sends out this thing that says you're a white supremacist if you are time urgent, if you have a sense of urgency. You're a white supremacist if you put a lot of consideration to the written word, things like that. So here's my point. We can't let these kids go hungry, and we've got to get the National Guard or whoever we brought in to really make sure we take care of that. But the silver lining is there is no way now to hide that something is wrong in our society where we have been unable to provide opportunity for people, and that part I get, to be economically successful, to have enough money to buy food. And if they don't, or if they do, then they suffer from social deprivation that causes them not to feed their kids. Or it's compounded. They work their asses off, but they have 2 jobs and they can't be home to make breakfast for their kids or lunch. This is a complex problem. And one of the silver linings that will have come out of this, no one's talking about it because we all want to do the right thing, but I can't help myself, because after being on the air all these years now, it's finally opened my eyes to a huge social problem. Think about it. Most of you who are sending your kids to school after a breakfast or with a breakfast and sandwiches or food or money for lunch, that we have tens of thousands of kids in New York City and here in Westchester who come to school hungry and who without the school couldn't have lunch. We need to take care of it, but we need to take a much harder look than we have at the causes of that. It's coming up on 6:57. And we'll get some of the 7 o'clock stuff in a little bit, to the weather again, and cover some other stories. Now, I have a second thing I want to do. Please, if you are in the restaurant business, and I'm going to give an email out. If you're in the restaurant business here in New Rochelle for now, and we'll go outside New Rochelle if this program works. Here at Radio Westchester, we're going to put a list together that we'll create a segment each show. And every restaurant out there that is delivering food or that is looking to the other side of this crisis, this is what we're proposing. And we'll put some meat on this skeleton. But this is up to you. So it can be marketed right. And we're not going to charge for this. This is going to be a service of Radio Westchester. We're going to ask you to give out gift certificates, but at some discount rate. So a $50 certificate might cost somebody $35. We want your input for this, and we'll get busy with this. We'll do this quickly. Right now, I would say 50% discount, and give it $1 value for dinner at your restaurant when this crisis is over. And we will put that list out. We will give your phone number and your email address with no charge to you. Sure, when this is all over, I'm going to come and say, gee, I hope you sponsor with us. Sure, I need the business. But we are a radio station, and an important thing that a radio station has to do is be a service to the community, and that's something that we want to do. So we'll take a time in the 7 or 8 o'clock hours, the most listened to hours that we have, and we'll take one of our segments, and we will read that list. So get your pen out, get a pencil out. You will use the following email, bob@radiowestchester.com. That's bob@radiowestchester.com. Now, what we're suggesting is 50%, but if you want to email, you say, no, Bob, 50's too little, 75% or 25% off. But 50% off will get those people back in your restaurant. And then you can start working from there. But maybe but you know what your margins are better than we do. But we will offer that as a free service. And to that end, I remind you, and even as we go forward with the program today, we are on 8 different outlets. Actually, a couple of more, but I'll share with you what they are. RadioWestchester.com. Bob Marrone's Facebook page, Facebook. Mornings with Bob Marrone. We are accessible on the app MyTuner Radio. And then the reason I'm looking at the camera today, we are, of course, on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Periscope, and YouTube, if I didn't say that. We also are on iHeartRadio, and soon, and also, oh my goodness, we have so many different things. iHeartRadio is probably enough of that. We have all these different things. You don't need to hear all the rest of it. At any rate, those are the 2 issues today. One, a clarion call to the people that run our schools and the people that are involved in social engagement throughout cities. here in New York and the greater metropolitan area. We have a social problem, and we have to deal with it. Now, it's coming up on 7 o'clock, and we will get to that caller right after we take care of a bit of business. I love the. By the way, I want to make an announcement for those of you who know me. For those of you who know me and who've worked with me when I was on Wall Street or at other locales and radio stations, today, for the first time, I finally did it. I took a full punch at my research computer. It actually worked. If you ever get to work with me, if the technology doesn't work right because it's dumb and stupid and it needs to be put together to work well, I will go violent on it. I have all the patience in the world with people, none with technology that doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And so my research computer was punched squarely in the screen this morning, and I feel wonderful about it. All righty, let's take a look at the weather. Weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.org. 41 overcast. The good news, we'll get up to 51 today. Now, we had some early showers. We may get another tinkle or two. It certainly hasn't been heavy rain. It will go away, though, into sunshine later today. Clear skies tonight, but getting down to 34. Why does clear skies become colder weather? I need to become a better meteorologist. Wednesday, mostly sunny. That's tomorrow. The high, 53, and on into Thursday, rain early, then remaining cloudy. The high will be 54 degrees. Friday's an interesting day. Mostly rain. Mostly cloudy. Some scattered showers. But the high will be between 70 and 75. And the weather brought to you once again exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.org. We are also supported at this top of the hour by Plug-in Virtual Reality, Dominic's Fine Cigars, the law firm of Payne & Con, Aging Issues Radio, and remember the shows that they podcast on their website as well, Aging Issues Radio. And we've been joined this week by our friends and they will be open for deliveries, and go and get a takeout food or a beer, whatever it is you need, over at the Beachmont Tavern. Now, we have a caller on the line. We will get to you in a moment. We just had another couple of items to talk about here, and then we will move on. In terms of the primaries, we've got Arizona, Florida, Illinois, and Ohio tonight. But now we've gotten word this morning that Ohio was postponed. Now, a judge said that it should go through, but the local executive municipal governors, if you will, have said nope and canceled it. So we're only going to have primaries in Arizona, Florida, and Illinois, and the numbers are just hugely swaying in the direction of Joe Biden. And another story we wanted to share with you is after originally charged with manslaughter, a Westchester County jail inmate will face an assault charge in the death of an 18-year-old who was also in custody. William Johnson, 20, of Yonkers, will face a felony count after he was accused of punching one Bryce Neville on January 30th on the side of the head. Neville hit the floor and suffered serious injuries. He was taken to the Westchester County Medical Center, where he died. The county's medical examiner ruled the cause of death to be blunt force injury to the head, a skull fracture, and subarachnoid hemorrhage, and that in News 12 today. Let's see who's on the telephone. Good morning. You're on Radio Westchester.
Good morning, Bob. Vince Russo here.
Nice. On time, but we love it. It's glad to have you. Vince, did you happen to listen to my monologue? And you and I have had this conversation before, and you've always called me nuts. My concern, not that I don't want people to have these free lunches, I'm trying to understand why it's necessary.
Well, it's necessary because people don't have the means to provide for their kids. It's unfortunate that the schools have to be part of the nutrition program that their students require.
Why don't we give more means to the parents? Why don't we give more food stamps or more whatever?
Well, I think it's because the government wants to ensure that the kids are actually getting food.
But is it the government's job to do that?
Well, yeah, I think it is.
In
I
other
think
words, what we're saying is, and I'm not being difficult, but I'm trying to understand dynamically without gilding the lily. What we're saying is we don't trust the parents to feed their kids.
right.
Well,
Yeah, I
and
think.
we need to put on that under a microscope.
Well, I think that's the case. Because on the one hand, you may have someone who, needs the money to pay their rent or
Ah, well,
bills
that's
like that.
okay, but that's
Well,
okay.
on the other hand, you may have people who use it for, you know,
Going to the movies or whatever.
drugs or alcohol
Well,
or
no, that's always the
gambling
outlier,
and
and
stuff
that's
like
oh
that.
yes, but even if it's to pay the rent, because here's the issue that I have: the more and more I have engaged people who work with our schools, and they talk about children that come to school late, or children who don't want to learn, or children that act out, and everything else. We've been focusing on all these efforts for the children. Quite frankly, we've been looking at the wrong people. Now, I don't know what you do about it, but really the issue is parents and the culture within which they live.
Right, and I think that the people in the schools and maybe in the government programs are feeling that that is an impossible road. That to change all of these cultural things that are going on and societal things that are going on that are resulting in these kids not getting food is going to be an impossible task to overcome. And it's easier just to give the kids the food directly.
Uh, well, it certainly solves a problem, but it also masks a problem, and it also robs society of the opportunity to deal with an issue, and then it's frosted over by these wild accusations of well, there is institutional racism that I get, but when they take it to the next level of white supremacy and only black kids or kids of color get in trouble in school. Now, I'm sure some white kids in good cities, when I say good cities, safer cities, get away with a lot. That's absolutely true. I get that. But that's like the people when we talk politics say, what about this one and what about that one? The fact that little Johnny just stabbed someone or punched him in the face, we're dealing with little Johnny here. So all I'm saying is we've been treating stuff seriously. It's the left's, if I may, it's the left's version of the kind of thing that Donald Trump does, which is creating a fake alternative reality.
Well, I don't know if it's a fake alternative
Sure
reality
it
as
is.
much as it's the real reality.
No,
The
but they
real,
pretend that it's not. They pretend these things have to do with racism and nothing. That's really all it is. And but that's fake.
well,
Even while there may be an element of that in there.
the fact that the kids are going hungry is not
How come we're not okay? If
is
see,
real.
if you send a kid to school, a social who's hungry and hasn't eaten. Now again, I'm going to pay them, but you've got to report to social services and tell somebody why.
Yeah, and then what are they going to do? They don't have enough staff to deal with stuff now. They don't have enough money to deal with social needs programs now.
Okay,
It's interesting whenever we talk about these kinds of issues. Everybody says yeah, we got to do something about this. We really need to do something about this. And then when you tell them, well, you know what, it's going to cost a lot of tax
well,
money to
okay.
do it,
Here's the
they
deal.
say, oh no, I'm not spending money on
Here's the
that.
deal. Traditionally, I've been the liberal and you've been the conservative on most issues. And I'm going to sound like we've switched sides here. But why should a man or a woman, regardless of color, race, creed, whatever, who is barely scraping by, but plans out the meals, puts sandwiches in the backpack, gets the kids off to school with food in their belly, and they're going without stuff. Maybe they can't afford copays, but still they're taking care of their kids. Why don't they get free lunch then and breakfast? Everybody
Like
ought to get it.
I look, I can't speak to these free
I'm not
lunch
asking you to
programs.
account. I'm trying to just
No,
put
no, no.
this
But I'm
issue out there.
no. My point is this though, that I believe, and I could be wrong, that any kid who wants free lunch gets it. It's not means tested
No,
or
well, that's
anything.
good. All right, but that's good. And,
So
as long as you can
I
do
think
it.
if a
Okay.
kid comes in and says I need lunch, they give it to them. Whether they
That's wonderful.
they drive up in a Mercedes or if they
How,
they had to walk.
my mother
Uh,
made garbage. Why didn't I get free lunch?
Well, I mean, again, I don't think they do have any restrictions.
Okay,
You know,
no, I'm
but the
just trying.
fact of the matter is
Yeah.
that look at it as the equivalent to people on welfare. You know, you always hear people saying, "Oh, those people on
I'm
welfare."
not one of
They,
those.
no, I know that, but just listen to the equivalents. That oh, you know, they sit around, they do nothing, they get this money, and blah blah blah. Well, if you look at what people get on welfare, it's not even a subsistence amount.
I know.
So, and it's the same thing with these free lunches. You know, what do they get? A bologna sandwich or
No,
something?
no, I'm
It's
with
not
you.
like they're getting,
Vince,
you
trying to
know.
understand. I'm glad that we do it, and it's a wonderful thing. But just like if we were in an emergency room and somebody's blood pressure was screwed up or they had a rash on their ankle, this is indicative of a larger societal problem that we don't try and deal with.
Well, I don't disagree with you at all. I think we need to do that. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at those um, issues, they are so large and complex
Yes, they
and
are.
costly that the people looking at them say, well, you know, we can identify them in broad terms because obviously not every family is going to be the same. But, you know, they say, well, you know, we barely have money to run the schools, let alone have all these social programs where
Well,
it's going to need billions and billions of dollars to be spent
all right.
on various methods of
All
alleviating
right.
this.
Well, I think I made my point, which is we really need to be looking at why we had, and this is God bless them or not, depending on what their political agendas may have been, but we had a superintendent here in New Rochelle and the racist superintendent down in New York willing to keep schools open, even increasing the likelihood of disease because of the other good intention of what are we going to do with these kids? How are they going to eat? And it's fair enough. But now, finally, a problem that needs to be put under the sun is under the sun. And that's all I wanted to accomplish today.
Well, you know, I think what you should do is, you know, try and contact somebody who administers this stuff, you know, in the school system or in the local government, and have them on and ask them, you know, what's the underlying causes and what are we doing about it, and you know,
They'll tell you
see
off the
what their
record. They
answers
won't
are.
tell you on the record. They'll tell you off the record for fear of their jobs. And the anecdote, but and then you get anecdotal stories. The stuff you hear is, Bob, if you knew what these people do, and I just don't go there because a lot of them go all the way to the right side of the issue, and you can't get a clear-headed answer. But all right, let's move on. I've done my duty. It's out there. Society won't do anything about it. Let's be sure we feed these kids. And let's be sure we look the other way when they conk somebody over the head. And let's fake their tests as
Well,
well. No, but my point is, Vince, what we're doing is we're enabling a whole generation of children to misbehave.
well, I think you're conflating two different things. I mean, just because a kid can't afford lunch doesn't mean they're a criminal.
No, wasn't
And
saying that. I wasn't saying
and
that.
I think that you know, there are other societal issues again that similar to kids not having food that need to be addressed in the you know in schools to prevent kids from behaving the way they
No,
you know
I understand that.
misbehaving.
But what I'm saying is, what we've created is this culture. Of course, there's no corollary between kids that need food. Most of them are just kids that don't have a lot of money. But what we're creating is a society where accountability isn't regarded very highly, and that's my concern. But again, thank you. You've leavened the bread, as it were, as we pass through 7:51. Here's something good. Fox and Friends' Jerry Falwell said that the coronavirus is just a ploy by the media to get rid of Donald Trump. Well, he said
Yeah,
it
those
could be
idiots
North.
keep saying that
Yeah,
stuff. I mean, it's just
40% of them
ludicrous.
do, Vin. 40%
It's
of the country,
ludicrous.
but
I mean,
40% of the country says it. It's all a hoax. God.
well, you know, and part of it is the result of that is that Trump has been very slow to react to all of this stuff. Every measure he's taken so far has been way after all these other countries are doing it, and it's always with reluctance. It's always, oh, you know, we really don't need to do this. I mean, that Devin Nunes was saying the other day, oh, it's fine, you know, Go support the local businesses. The waiters and waitresses, they need the money, so go to restaurants and bars and stuff like that. You know, these people are just so inept at handling this thing. It's just amazing.
Well, I got to share this with you. I understand that, but I also know in talking to all the public officials here who have been tremendous, I think. In fact, if the president, in one more speech, has to use adjectives and adverbs, I'm going to puke. His speech yesterday, tremendous. They're doing a great job. It's a wonderful thing. They're phenomenal. It's great. It's the best. We have the best scientists, the prettiest women, the biggest willies. I mean, it just doesn't stop. But anyway, but to be fair to the president and all the other public officials, but they have, at the same time, they act as the appropriate Cassandra that they need to be and put the warning out there. They also need to keep people from panicking. It's a very tight rope.
Yeah, but they could do exactly what I lauded George Latimer for doing. George got out there. He laid out the realistic situation. He laid out what steps the government is advising people to do. He was very measured. He wasn't in a panic mode, but he was saying this is very serious. We need to do these things. I mean, that's what these knuckleheads can be doing. But no, they're out. Bob, I'm telling you, I still have people here who are telling me, this is baloney. There's really, it's just the flu and nobody's going to die from this. And it's all a big panic thing. These are intelligent people. These aren't people who have no, wherewithal to suss these things out. So by doing that kind of stuff, every reluctance that they show means, well, we're kind of forced into doing this. It's really not necessary.
Well, there's a lot baked into that mixes common sense with a lack of empathy. And that's rare, I know, to have common sense and a lack of empathy being the same person. But there is a sentiment out there. Well, it's like another flu, and a lot of old, sick people are going to die from it. What else is new? Move on.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, is that Trump, I think, is making a very big tactical mistake because, I think in his mind, he's saying, well, this coronavirus thing may cause me to not be reelected. And the mistake he's making is if he handled it in a really straightforward, decisive way, it would have enhanced his chances of being reelected. Everybody sees that he's a bozo.
Well, you know what? A lot of it is that he's not an articulate guy, and he wrestles finding the right words. Okay, and so this is why I agree with you. That's why all of a sudden people are looking at Mike Pence and saying, because in comparison to the president, my granddaughter's articulate. It just doesn't. He's just not good with words. And he uses all of these adjectives and adverbs to fill intellectual voids or verbal voids.
Yeah, but that's what speechwriters are for. I mean,
but do you ever watch him read a speech like he did 3 days ago? Well, it was like a hostage tape.
I know. So, if he really was serious about this stuff, I mean, what's the lesser of two evils? Him just spouting off nonsense, which he's been doing, or get a speechwriter to write a speech that's measured, that's controlled, that gives good advice.
Yeah. But the biggest thing he did, the best things he's done, is turned and had these experts on, or Mike Pence on, and just say very few words, and you look like you have your hands on the levers of power.
Yeah,
that's
right. But he doesn't do that.
Anyway, we got another guest coming up. Did your brother get away safe?
He's leaving this afternoon. My wife came back from Georgia yesterday.
Oh, sorry about that.
The plane was half empty.
The plane!
And, my brother had come in from India last week, and boy, he came in just in time because people were waiting 5, 6, 7 hours in line,
wow.
To get through the immigration and all that.
I know. Listen, we got another guest waiting 5, 6, 7 minutes to come on. But he's got to wait. That's part of the drill. Thank you, as always.
All right, Bob. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right. We will be getting our next guest in a moment. This is the one, or someone sending me a note. Well, they're probably mad that I punched one of the guests was looping. Don't know why. Don't know why. They weren't looping in my headphones. Hold on, I'm getting a message. Your 720 guest was looping on the VIP line, was booping. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what happens when they call and somebody's on hold. So thank you very much. The ghost of computers past. All right, let's go to my next guest as we pass through 720. Political analyst based out of Florida, long-time lawyer and political operative here in Westchester County, ran for Congress, a lifelong Republican who now bites on the word. Please welcome Mike Edelman. Michael, good morning.
Hey, Bob. Hope everything's okay in the Rochelle.
Well, actually, you know what? It's as it is for everyone, scary. And it's troubling, but it's nothing like it is being perceived outside of this town. I don't know. Do you follow me?
Yeah. You're saying that your containment situation is not as bad as we think it is, looking at you and hearing about it.
Well, that's exactly right, and it needed to be done because the governor needed the manpower. And it was a good decision on the face of it, but it had an unintended consequence. Calling in the National Guard had everybody thinking that we were a city in lockdown. These guys didn't come with trucks, in military trucks. They don't have guns. They are Uber Eats drivers, and I don't mean that to be demeaning.
They're helping out. They're helping deliver
food.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
That's all. So, and in fact, we've had reports now people in other cities don't want to serve people from New Rochelle, or they see us and they think that we're radioactive. Whereas
that's why Chinese restaurants are going broke.
Yeah.
How nuts is that?
Well, now we've got all the restaurants just closing. So, and Corona beer is probably not doing well. So, what is your take? You've been in government your whole life. Now, and even though I thought the governor, maybe had no choice. I thought he made that tactical mistake, but very well intended. He's been getting high marks. Latimer and others, he's the county executive, getting high marks for the way they're handling it. In general, and I'm not trying to beat up on the president because he's just not articulate, but the president is not.
Well, if you saw the press conference yesterday,
yes, I did.
There was a total 180 by the president in terms of tone. He's taking it seriously. He's telling people to do what his health professionals are saying they should do for the first time. The problem, Bob, is this. For the last month or 6 weeks, we've been hearing from Fox News that this is a Democratic hoax. Don't take it seriously. Rush Limbaugh said it's the common cold. They were wrong. And they do it because they can gin up their listeners and gin up their ratings. Now the president is confronting the fact that this, as he told his little boy, this is really bad. And now he's got to undo the damage that Fox and he did for the last 6 weeks. But his tone was extremely encouraging yesterday because, he was serious about it. Stay out of the bars. Don't go to restaurants. We're not. I'm home. I bought $250 worth of frozen dinners. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not playing golf. I'm not going to the movies. We're not going out with friends. We're not going to the municipal golf course to have a cheeseburger. We're not going anywhere.
Hold on a minute. One of my guests is throwing in TV dinners. Get the wife on the phone.
Well,
I'm just having fun.
I'm the one that cooks, Bob. I'm the one that cooks.
Well, then, what the heck? Well, then she ought to get on the phone and start complaining about you. Get in the kitchen, Michael.
The problem with cooking is you got to go to the grocery store to replenish.
Yes, I know. You're doing the right thing. But I wanted to have a little bit of fun during these dire times. Now, you've been involved in politics all your life. Have you ever seen anything quite like this in general?
No, never. Not since World War II has the entire nation been asked to sacrifice on a scale that we're talking about. But there was a report out of England that I think scared the president that said if we don't do what he's asked us to do, we're going to lose 2 million plus people, which is more than the people that died in World War I, World War II, the Civil War, and Vietnam. So this is serious. And let me just say one thing. What's extremely disappointing to me is the way the kids are acting. When I say kids, I don't mean little kids. I mean 18, 19, 20 college kids. They're going to beaches in Florida. They're going to bars. They're not listening to what the president is saying. And I think that's largely because he blew his credibility a long time ago.
Well, but also, if I may, and this isn't, I don't know that we want to blame the president for this one. I'm on the board of a really fine mental health organization. And do you know that half of the people, the young people that apply for jobs who get an interview don't show up? If it's a nice day, they don't show up. If they get a party to go to, they don't show up. They have a very different idea. They're a very entitled generation, my friend.
Oh, I'm aware of it. I have one living at home.
No, they're very entitled generation. And then when you push them, they'll say, okay, boomer.
Okay, boomer. Well, boomers listen to presidents, even if the president is of the opposite party and we don't like him, because the president has information that we don't have. And when Anthony Fauci gets up there and says, don't do this, don't do that, I'm listening. And these kids ought to listen too, because guess what? Diseases don't distinguish, okay? Because you can die if you're 30.
Well, and you'd have to be very, very ill. Now, one thing, and I hate to pile on, but I do have to do this because it's an honest assessment. And I think the behavior of a governor like Andrew Cuomo is at his best right now, or Vice President Mike Pence, who was a mute for 3 years, to hear Mike Pence talk, to listen to the governor or George Latimer, the president loses stature by multiples.
Yes, that's right.
Because these men have been in government all their life, and maybe they're polished at bullshit, but nonetheless, the comparisons are frightening. You know, it's not all filled with all the adjectives and adverbs. It's the best. It's the mostest, the biggest willing.
Yeah, it's we're doing better than anybody else, and I can't believe it. And look, those of us who recognize those failures in that candidate before he was elected understood, maybe because my law firm represented him many years ago, that policy and facts weren't his strong suit. Expertise is something he rejected because he thought he knew better than, quote, his generals. Now he understands it's life or death, and he doesn't want to get blamed, frankly, for 3 million deaths in the United States. So he's doing what he has to do. So we'll give him credit now, a little bit too late, but we'll give him credit now going forward. Let's hope he can pull the nation together to work together to get out of this pandemic alive.
You know, there's another side to this, and my guest is Mike Edelman, the political analyst out of Florida. You know, the president still can, and might have thought this in the beginning, opportunities work two ways. You have an opportunity to make a fool of yourself, as when someone like me finally got a morning show and made a fool of myself in the beginning, still do now sometimes, or you can prevail. You know, it was actually an opportunity for him to show some leadership chops.
I agree, and he did for the first time in his administration. You know, other than the fact that he won't take responsibility for not having the testing out, that was the press conference before. I think he made it very clear, particularly the conversation he had with Barron. You know, he didn't have to recite, never does, by the way, conversations he has with his kids. But he said honestly, he said, Barron asked me, how bad is it? And I told him it's really bad. And it is really bad. So if he can guide us going forward, and look, if everybody listens and does what he says, which is real simple, you know, socially distance yourself from everybody else. Stay at home. Don't go out to eat. Don't be a hero, because even if you're not sick, you could kill somebody else. Well, an older person, a grandmother, an uncle, somebody who's got compromised immune system. You know, understand that it's up to everybody to pitch in.
Well, that's leaving us all to make decisions. I finally made a decision yesterday, other than the guy that comes in and does sports for a half hour or an hour, although he also does production and other things, is as I'm not having people come in the studio anymore, and eventually I might have to do the show remotely, you know. So You should see the train station here. You know how busy New Rochelle train
Yeah.
station is. We have a parking lot with 1,500 cars and a bus
Yep.
depot that loops under it. And there are maybe 5-10% of the people that are normally here every day.
I've been in New Rochelle train station campaigning back in the day in the 70s with the district attorney at 6 in the morning, and then, there were thousands of people literally running for trains, and I would imagine it's desolate. Now.
It is desolate, and the streets are desolate, and you can drive your car. It's great for traffic. And as you know, we're under state of emergency now. Latimer declared one yesterday to follow the governor. The mayor did Friday. The mayor of Mount Vernon just did so. And some are even intimating making stronger curfews. And for example, the general recommended, it's not law-binding, is 8 o'clock at night, but Mount Vernon is saying 5 o'clock at night.
Well, there's no reason really to be out at night mingling unless you've got an emergency. You have to go to the grocery store, you're out of food, stuff like that. But there's no reason to hang out. There's no reason to go, there's no entertainment. It's all closed anyway. I'm interested to see what happens down here. I'm getting a lot of emails from the restaurants we visit frequently telling us they're doing takeout. So you drive up, stick your hand out, you get the food, you go home. And that goes for McDonald's, by the way.
Well, what we're doing here is we just offered, and we're going to mention it again in the next hour, we've been offering all the local restaurants to call us, and we have this idea. In fact, one of our callers had put some real meat on the bone. We want to announce the restaurants that are delivering and give their phone number out and give their address.
Good idea.
No, but we're not even going to ask for any money. Maybe when this is all over, they'll think kindly on us. But one of the ideas that a regular listener support of the program, is what they should do is sell half-priced gift cards to be redeemed after the crisis is over. Get people back in their restaurants. Wonderful idea. So we have offered them, call us on we've given an email out, rather, bob@radiowestchester.com, and give us your contact information, website, whatever, and we'll announce something for a whole segment every day.
Oh, it's very important that these small businesses stay open, and that government bails out whoever has to bail out, so that employees don't scatter and leave and businesses collapse. They've got to prop this up until we get it all clear, because otherwise you can have no restaurants in business.
Well, any small business, none of these people that usually advertise with me, maybe they're not going to come back now. Or I got one order I got was 1/3 of what it was supposed to be because of what the people are going. And we all have to do this. So
everybody has to do it, and and that's why takeout is important. I mean, even if you don't need to, even if you go to the store and buy food, you really ought to patronize a restaurant that is allowing takeout, because you got to keep them in business.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do without a meatball hero from Modern. I do my takeout there. Michael, it is. Oh, one last thing. I got a minute left, and this is important. Ohio decided not to go forward with the with their primary tonight, but the other 3 states did. But I looked at the numbers. Bernie's done.
Bernie's over. That's all over. It was over last week. The debate that he had with Joe Biden was pathetic from Bernie's point of view. He was preaching. Joe Biden looked presidential. Joe Biden will be the next president. He's killing Donald Trump in the states that Trump needs, including the state of Ohio, which is, I think, why Governor DeWine has canceled the primary. Because Abe Lincoln didn't cancel the 1864 election in the middle of the war.
No, I guess that's why the governor did that. But you know what? It's all going to happen on Election Day in November. If, in fact, do you think we'll delay the election?
No, I don't think so. I think this is going to be passed pretty much. It's going to be peaked by then. And I think people will be able to move around, certainly be able to go vote. A lot of states have voting in advance, too, by the way. So, you don't have to go into a crowded voting booth. You can take your time over 2 weeks. Down in Florida, you have early voting. So you go over there, there's nobody there. I think the election will go on. I think Joe Biden will put a black woman on the ticket, and that's going to be all she wrote.
Who do you think it'll be?
Stacey Abrams or Kamala Harris. Either one.
So I don't think it's going to be Kamala. So maybe we have a bet now. You know, you've got some listeners who are hoping the president never quits. You know, so that they can gloat and say you got it wrong. I want you to know.
I know they want to say that, but it's looking more and more to me like he's going to decline a run because.
Well, we shall see.
He's going to get beaten.
We shall see. They're listening to you, Triple Bogey.
I know.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, you take
All right,
care.
Bobby. Next week.
Bye-bye. He, of course, Mike Edelman. We've got our next guest coming on in a moment, but I do have to do a reset. It is 6:35. You're listening to Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. This is Radio Westchester, your radio station at the train station as we pass through into the bottom half of the 7 o'clock hour. And that also means it's time for another look at the weather. And I know we've been repeating it, but that's what we do every 15 minutes. Hey, the all news stations do it every 8 minutes, so we're doing pretty good. It's 42 now. It's going to get up to 51 today. We had some rain and drizzle, light rain. We're going to have a little more, but this afternoon that will clear up and we'll have increasing sunshine, getting up to 51 degrees today. Tonight, clear skies, 34. Tomorrow, it'll be sunny, getting up to the mid-50s, but it'll chill out at night, 39. On Thursday, rain early, then remaining cloudy. The high will be 54 degrees. And on into Friday, cloudy with scattered showers, the high of 69 degrees. And the weather, as always, is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. The bottom of the hour is supported by Aging Issues Management. Of course, the radio shows are recorded and or broadcast live here. Aging Issues Radio. The law firm of Payne & Kahn, Dominic's Fine Cigars, plug-in virtual reality, and our friends over at the Beachmont Tavern. You can, they'll deliver, and you can go pick up food there and maybe get a little pitcher of beer, or however they do that. We'll find out. All righty, let's get back to business. My next guest, boy, he's done it all, and he obviously continues to. Right now, he is a very fine defense attorney out of White Plains. He has been the head of the investigations unit at the DA's office here in Westchester County. He has been a cop on the beat and a detective. Please welcome, and I realize this line is on already, please welcome Mike Duffy. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Bob. Excuse me. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
That's right. I keep forgetting.
Yeah,
I announced it earlier.
The worst St. Patrick's Day in the world.
Well, and you're a typical Irish cop, folks. I had to go there. Anyway, how are you? How is your family doing with this? Are you working from home? But as a defense attorney,
we're great. Yeah, I am working from home. The courts basically are shut down right now. So
now let me ask you a question. I have a parking ticket I want to fight.
Mm-hmm.
Will I get a postponement for that, do you think, or should I?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll send you a notice in the mail.
Yeah, because I got my fists up and ready, baby. I'm ready to go.
As long as you sent it in with the not guilty plea already, so they'll send you a court date.
Oh, I can do that. All right.
If you didn't do that, then I don't know.
Well, thanks a lot. All that help, boy. Some defense attorney you are.
No, then you're going to get banged for the fine. Then
so. No. See, look at this, folks. See what happens. He can keep a man off death row, but he can't get me out of a parking ticket. What the heck? Hey, Bob, I'll see you in 6 months. Don't worry about it.
You can't make chicken salad out of you know what, Bob.
Oh, man, what a great defense attorney. You'll like it in there. Hey, you get 3 squares a day just when you shower.
Ice cheese sandwich. Yeah,
government cheese. Thank you very much. As someone who has been in law enforcement and now, of course, dealing with the law all your life, what's your take? It may be a nice, fresh take that's apolitical. As a public servant, how do you look at what you hear? Do you think the government, without being overly critical, the president or the government, how do you think we're dealing with this, and what does your experience tell you about what you said?
Well, I think it's truly a unique situation. I think Governor Cuomo's doing a great job. I think George Latimer's doing a great job. I think the president's doing a great job. So people seem to be in tune. Not that we want something like this, But maybe it'll give us a little ability in the future to work together. But I'm not naive. I hope that's the case, but who knows? But anyway, I think government's doing a great job. The cops still have to go out there every day, and the firefighters, and the postal workers, etc. They got to go out there and do their job. They have to be protected. I don't know how long it's going to take for this to run through or wash through, as the president says, but life goes on to a certain degree. It's not like it was. The courthouse the other day was totally was shut down. They sent home 21 court officers from Westchester County Courthouse that apparently were either exposed or tested positive. So it's going to be rough. As long as these people have the protection they need, that's what's paramount.
Well, that is what I wanted to ask you about. You mentioned it, and I think of it when I'm driving around because, doing the radio, I'm one of those people who's announcing to the public, so I got to be on. I see police officers on their routes. I see people here at the train station from the MTA doing what they have to do, firemen and women doing what they have to do, doctors, nurses. How do we protect them?
Well, it's tough. They need the basic procedures, the rubber gloves and things like that. But I tell you what, Bob, I was coming down from upstate on Sunday, and troopers are still pulling cars over on the Taconic.
I'm telling you.
Unless they're running somebody off the road or causing a hazard, I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I'd do that. I'd let them go because and the way the troopers do it, they come over and they stick their face in your window. And, they want to get a whiff to see if you have any alcohol on your breath. I mean, that's what these guys do. And I'm like, why are they still doing this?
You know what? Because that's what they do. And you have to admire it.
But I don't think at that point, maybe Saturday, Sunday, was getting to the point where it's really scary out there. And the isolation part, I mean, they don't care if we wear a blue uniform, gray uniform, or whatever. Somebody's traveling up from the city or whatever, you pull the car over and stick your face in there. More people are getting exposed. We really have to, as Dr. Fauci said, flatten that curve. And the only way you're going to do it is by people staying at home now. It's only been a couple of days now, but cabin fever is going to set in.
Oh, yeah.
But,
but you could still go out and jog, like
and if it's a beautiful day, it's nice. The fresh air and the sun, they say, is good for the virus. So,
well, God bless the men and women who do that in uniform, because as you heard from me last week, I'd be afraid to stop somebody at 2 a.m. all by my little lonesome, and yet they're doing.
Well, that's a safety issue, Bob. This is, in a way, it's a health issue and a safety issue.
But
what I'm saying is, law enforcement, certain traffic stops and arrests are. The police officer is cloaked with a vast amount of discretion. Okay, and there's certain things you do that you have to do, and there's other things that you don't have to do, and it's in your discretion. And I would think the orders have gone out to make it more discretionary, and you're dealing with the public. That to me would be common sense. I don't know if that in fact has happened, but the guys and women out there aren't stupid either. They know that too. So,
well, no, they're not. I got to get a guy on the air. I can only give his first name. His name is James. People have to earn a living, and there's a guy here. He's the main guy who does maintenance and has to sweep up the train station. And he's here each and every day working his butt off because he has to. Somebody has to do that. He's the guy spraying. And I'm going to see if we'll talk on the microphone later. Well, you know what I had yesterday? I don't know if you've been to the studio yet. I'm trying to remember if you've locked anybody up. Okay.
No.
Well, we're right here, literally in the train station out at
I've seen it. I've driven by it.
Yeah.
So.
And a homeless person came up hacking and coughing right to the front door, coughed all over the front door. I had to be out there with bleach yesterday. So now I'm saying that, and my family members are going to say, God, don't come anywhere near me, so I'm dealing with that. But it is a very interesting time, and police officers do have a discretion. Do you know what came up today? And it's really a societal issue. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about it and get your opinion. And once again, folks, my guest is Mike Duffy, defense attorney. Don't go to him for a traffic stop, or you will see the inside of jail. But he also was a detective, a police officer, and the chief of investigations for the DA's office. You have all these titles. One of the things that's evolved, and it's fundamentally a good thing, is that the reason that Carranza God, I don't like that guy, but Carranza was slow to close the New York schools, and even here in New Rochelle, there was a good intention behind it all because a lot of kids wouldn't get their lunches
The meals,
and meals. I was not aware, and I guess because I'm an old fart, but I was not aware that we have so many people that are going to starve if they don't go to school.
Yeah, nor I. The only meal I ever got in Catholic school was on a Friday in Lent. I got a hot cross bun, and that was it.
No. You big tough guys, you got your lunch money from the rest of us. That's what you got. Hey, you, Marrone, Pipsqueak, get over here. Give me your lunch. No, but on one hand, it makes me say, my God, thank goodness we do it. But on the other hand, it shouldn't be necessary. Why are we not giving enough if it's food stamps or whatever? And
it's true, Bob. We're gonna have to reevaluate a lot of stuff when this is over.
Yeah.
The toothpaste is already out of the tube with that, and I understand that position. Obviously, kids got to eat.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll bring certain families closer together. I don't know.
Well, one of the things, and I was talking with a guy earlier today about it, and for the liberal way I skew, I know my position is not supposed to be this, but it seems to me that the problem is if it's economics, the government has to help deal with it. But if it's that people are not managing their money right, and not feeding their kids, well, people ought to be held accountable. But then you get into a whole nother societal issue. It's just, but what you said is my point. It's one of those things that this whole crisis is going to put a microscope on, and it'll be apolitical for a change.
Yeah, that's what I was saying before. I hope so. But you do hear rumblings, and this is from the left. I'm not saying, the left is always bad. But this is the stuff you read on Twitter and everything, saying the feds. 4 days ago, the feds got to jump in and do this. No, we're a federalist society, so health and welfare it devolves down to the states initially. And the states have to do their job, and then they can request federal help.
Well, yeah, and actually, though the president said that
Right.
apropos, and he was right about that this is best done locally, and then they go to the federal government for supplies, for policy, for funding. But as you see, Cuomo's doing a pretty good job here.
But not only is it best done locally, Bob, that's our system. That's the way the Constitution and the system is set up.
Don't get me started. I thoroughly agree with you. And I had this idea last week, and the people that helped me at the radio station here talked me out of it. I wanted to go out, this is before the crisis got big, I wanted to go out to the radio station and ask people out to the platform how many who understood the type of government that we have.
Yeah.
And people said, Bob, they're going to look at you like you have 8 heads because they're not going to know. But yet, and I say this to the left that wants the government to take care of everything, and the right that wants to call everything a hoax, and that it's okay to yell at judges and thumb their nose at the separation of powers. The fact of the matter is we have a Republican form of government that has, and that the federal government's rights were conferred by the states, not the other way around. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I can go on and on. I don't mean to be preaching, but they told me don't even bother doing it because people aren't going to know. And then I say, well, how do you fly your flag and not know what that flag means?
Well, you ever see when they do these man on the streets, and even Jimmy Kimmel does them in a funny vein, or Fox News does them, or other stations do them, and people, it's kind of scary the answers they come up with.
Well, yeah, they all turn into Sarah Palin. God, did I?
Yeah.
You know what I used to think? I'm sure she thought that Crimea was a hand cream. I'm convinced. See, really. But yet had enough charisma. You see, this is why I'm a no good male. Because I was perfectly fine. I wouldn't want her to be president, but I go out with her. You know what I mean? It's just something wrong with me.
Bob, geez, you're going to be...
I'm just... No, that's not... No, I'm just saying that she was attractive. Now, what did I do? A little humor. We need a little levity to break this up.
Need a little green beer. And then Irish people don't drink green bear anyway. They think it's ridiculous.
By the way, I've been in Ireland. Have you ever been to Ireland?
Yes, I have.
It is the most now, and I've traveled all over the world from my previous gig. It is the most welcoming country to Americans that I've ever been in, and that includes the UK, which is welcoming to America. But UK has just a little bit of that snootiness that the Irish don't have.
Yep, absolutely. It's a very, very friendly place. A quick anecdote for you. I was driving around there, and my wife and I were lost in the countryside, and literally sheep, walking if you've driven in Ireland, the sheep walking across the road with their marked dots.
Some of them are pretty cute.
Colored dots. They're all over the place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was a little pub there, and I said, let's stop here. We'll find out. This was pre-GPS. And we walk in, and every head turned towards us, like we were aliens or something, my wife and I. So we're looking, and all of a sudden this guy comes walking over to me. And I'm like, here we go. And he says, excuse me. He says, aren't you a cop in White Plains?
You probably arrested him for drunk and disorderly.
Yeah. You know what? He turned out to be a police officer from another jurisdiction.
That's great.
It was so funny. And I had no idea where I was. I was lost. And
you're
on the other side of the world.
I just loved how warm the cities were. And you go in a pub, and even if they know you're American and you don't know what you're doing, they kind of make you feel comfortable. But, have you ever been to the Ring of Kerry in that part of Ireland?
Yes.
If you said I had 3 months to live and I could live anywhere in the world, I would go there in a heartbeat. And I have to be honest, I didn't want to go. I was like, well, I've been all over Japan and France, and why do I want to go? But the UK, I've been all over and so finally I did it. And what is that? Is that
That's
cell?
funny. I wasn't particularly crazy about going there myself, but I did. We took a ride in a donkey cart and all that stuff.
Hey, well, it's two jackasses. That's redundant. I'm sorry, I couldn't let it go. The ball was floating in at 2 miles an hour.
It was up in the air, you got.
I had to take a swing at it. I'm sorry. You just can't leave me that way. By the way, that sound that I just heard, is that your new marketing sound as a defense attorney? Was that a cell clamping in? What the hell?
Very similar sound in my patio door.
Folks, you want to use his services, and that's what it'll sound like after the judge says,
this is what
"No bail." Oh my goodness! All right, let's go to some of the other stuff. The New York State Senate is at odds with the New York State Assembly. And Hasty, the guy who leads the assembly, is just adamantine that he doesn't want to amend the bail law. I
saw that. Yeah.
Andrea Stewart-Cousins, though, she's willing to do it. She wants to do it. She wants to be sensible.
Janet DeFiore wants some changes. The governor wants some changes. So I think that'll come down the road. I don't know how he can stand against those people, but I don't know what his point is. Probably just his constituency. That's my guess.
No, and I guess that's politics, and that is the very Republican form of government that I was bragging about before as we pass through 752. I was looking at some figures and about public defenders and things of that nature. What kind of service do people get from a public defender?
I'm sorry, Bob. It broke up. I didn't hear you.
Oh, that's okay. I was looking at some figures about public defenders the other day, and some are very good. One cost me a lot of money when he was defending a tenant who was raping me, as you know. But what is the quality of them? And do some people just do that for a living? And how do we know that an individual is getting a good defense, a person that doesn't
Quality varies. People do it for a living. And you don't know unless you specifically know that individual that somebody's getting somebody good until you're already in court and the case is going on. But there's a defender's office in the Bronx called the Bronx Defenders, okay, and that is a separate entity. That, and I don't mean this means they're better or anything like that. They cull Harvard Law, Yale. They take all the top law schools. They have these people in there, and they have a strict system of defending their people no matter what. And what I mean by that is they don't really look to go to plea offers or something like that. They don't have to. They'll litigate to the end, and so it varies. It varies.
That's what I thought. But if you weren't a person of means, do you get to fire your person if they gave you a public defender and they weren't any good? Are you allowed to say, I don't want this guy or gal? Or
actually, no. I mean, it's you have a right to an attorney. You don't have a right to an attorney of your choice if it's appointed. So that I hear judges say that all the time. You're free to go out and retain your own attorney, but the system is they can't start. Well, this guy's better suited for you, and this guy's better for this. They'll go down a list and appoint people that way. Each local court in Westchester does it a different way.
Well, I guess I better.
There's no set method.
I guess I better be nice to you again. No more jokes about two jackasses pulling a cart or any of that stuff. One more thing before you go. Again, I did actually put some notes in. Where was the one? Do you ever miss the life of investigations? I mean, it's got to be interesting work, even if it's drudgery at times. Do you ever miss that?
Investigations. Yes, I mean that is very interesting, and I was. Excuse me, Bobby, I'm losing my voice here. I was at the end of my career. I was basically supervising investigations.
Right. It's like anything else. You get
So,
promoted out of
I
what you
wasn't
love.
doing the actual investigation, but
Yeah.
the only thing I really truly miss, is being on the street in uniform. I really like that.
Talk more about that.
Well, it's just that you're interacting. For me, it was always a people thing. You're interacting constantly with the people. You're getting to know the store owners, the people. You're helping people, and that's what cops should be doing. They should be helping people, no matter. You got to pull the occasional car over and do this and stop people and arrest people, but for the most of the 8-hour tour, you're out there. People are asking you directions, saying hi to you. So you're stopping in their stores. So, it's a very people-oriented business, or it should be.
That's nice.
Less and less now, because guys and girls are just driving around in cars. So.
Now, are there cops on the beat anywhere left in America? Not really.
Manhattan, you see some.
Because I remember growing up, and I know I'm going to age myself out here. But remember Officer Joe Bolton?
Sure.
Yeah,
Yep.
I used to watch that every day. We were brought up with that, and the police was a friendly. I guess the right word is a friendly image to you. But you actually miss being out on the street. And what about when you are a detective, though, and you're trying to put stuff together, motive and all of that? That has to be interesting work, no?
It really is. And I did a little teaching of investigations, too, down at Monroe College there for a while. And, if somebody brand new is coming to work with me as an investigator, fresh out of uniform, the thing is, don't assume anything. I see not so many, but I see people that get locked onto, it had to be this guy. This guy does this kind of stuff. It had to be him. And once you do that, you've lost the ability to really look at everything. Because you're focused on one thing, and you're not focused on the true thing, which is finding out what really happened. So.
Well, do you ever have a case, and there's one, I think, there's a case that I talk about maybe once a year, and I have for about 8 or 9 years now. There was a murder in Marrone, the postal guy who was knifed to death, and somebody let him in the house. And the people that I talked to on the street, I always got the impression that everyone, including, I may be wrong, but I'm wondering if this ever happens, if it is true, that just about everyone knew who did it, but they couldn't prove it. How common is that?
It's not too common for murders. It's common for everything else. Burglaries are the hardest crimes to solve. Excuse me. Assaults, there's usually witness. Now it's different now too, Bob, because there's video everywhere.
I was going to say, with the video everywhere, it's got to be hard to get away with. I can't even plan a good crime.
Right. But back then, that's unusual for a homicide, because you will usually narrow it down to a few good suspects. And, but it happens too. It happens. Yeah. There's a detective in Mamaroneck. I was reading a story on that recently. I don't remember his name, or a detective or a lieutenant. I don't know what his rank is. Pardon me, officer, because I don't remember. But what I do remember is him working on that case. The story devolved around him working on that case and opening it up. And, he seemed to be looking at a lot of good stuff in it. So, kudos to them for still doing that.
Oh, and I had some of them on, and I sensed they were stifled, because there were things that for we lay people, the girl was seeing another guy. Somebody let them in. Whoever got in there had to know them. It was peaceful. She clammed up. It just strange.
Yeah, most of the murders, everywhere are emotional crimes. So very few are, I'm just going to pull up, rob you, and kill you. That's
Right.
It happens, unfortunately, but those are rare. Murder is more a personal crime. I know you assaulted me, you hurt my feelings. Now I'm going to kill you. So,
Gee, a little.
I mean, and seriously, that's what it is. I've seen murders for all of those reasons.
I bet you have. Do you ever talk to someone, and I know this is just interesting to me, and I'm sure interesting to listeners, Nick, because you've been the head of investigations, you've been a detective. Have you ever talked to someone, and not that you dropped your suspicion of them, and said, my God, and especially you found out later that they did do it, and where you almost couldn't believe that someone like that could kill someone? Do you ever have that? Or is there always something a little quirky?
I have that about every type of crime. I have people, larcenies, and you're like, I don't know if this person did this. And then it turns out they did. Yeah. Some people are good liars. Some people, sometimes all the evidence isn't there right away. You develop it at a later point in time. But that's what you're supposed to do. You don't want to take anybody into custody that didn't do it. It happens, but it should happen very, very rarely.
Now, that's just fascinating stuff to me. They say that a good detective, I mean, I know it's a little bit of a wives' tale, but how easy, can you tell when a person's lying, or there's some people that just, you can tell right away they're lying?
No, I can't.
Good, I'm glad. In case I ever have to lie to you, copper, I want to be
like
sure.
when you tell me I'm a nice guy and I'm this and that, I know you're lying every time you introduce me
Trust
on the
me,
radio.
trust me. You don't know how I have to swallow my moral compass when I introduce you. Folks, if you could, what are you, 6'3", 6'4"? How tall are you?
A little over 6'2".
Yeah, that's what I thought. 6'2", and I remember that day. Tell me how you approach a guy, and you did. I said, "Fine, I'll admit to anything." That's.
It depends. Depends on the person.
Listen, again, I'm forced to give you a compliment. You come on here, we never tell you what we're going to talk about in advance, and you inform us, and with good humor, and people need that right now. And
yeah, Bob, if there's serious stuff we always discuss, but I try to keep it light. That's the way I look at life in general. Look, you can't go around as a sourpuss. You got to have a sense of humor, or you're never going to get through this stuff. So.
Oh well, you know what I just did? He's not listening because he's probably not up here. I have a dear friend who's in a nursing home, a veteran, but he's living a decent life. He doesn't have his bottom limbs anymore, but he can zip around in a wheelchair and stuff. And I couldn't get to see him last week because now he's locked in. So I went out and I made a coronavirus ball, and I shipped it to him at the hospital. So I expect any day to get a phone call filled with expletives. I want him to put it like on his nightstand, He's got his own copy of the coronavirus now. And he's a guy, an Irish guy, go figure, just has the brass cojones of a bull. Wonderful man, enjoys his life, and a veteran as well. So anyway, sir, thank you so very much. And
it's a really... I got to say, depressed St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah,
but
St. Patty's Day
so.
to you, the wearing of the green. I didn't brush my teeth in honor of all my Irish friends, so they'll look a little green this morning. Take care. Mike Duffy, everyone, and you could look him up. What's the name of your law firm? Mike Duffy.
Mike Duffy, law offices of Michael K. Duffy.
Yeah, you should slam the door again so they can know what it's like to be represented.
I was going to do that. I was right near it.
There it is, folks. Take care. Thank you
Bye,
very much.
Bob.
Bye-bye. Mike Duffy, what a mensch. Really, what a good guy. All righty, it is 8 o'clock. Obviously, let me see my phone. Jake has fallen victim. He's staying at home like the law is telling him to. So we're going to open up the phones for anybody that wants to talk sports with us, and we have to use the hotline, which my bosses don't like when we do, but our Skype line is giving us some trouble today, last couple of days. We've got to get it fixed tomorrow. So call us on if you're interested in getting into the issues of the day. 914-999-4006, 999-4006. Another look at the weather. Let's look at what's coming up. A lot of people to talk with in this hour. Of course, we'll talk a little bit of sports now, catch you up on the news, and then We will be talking with someone who deals with allergies, infections, and the lung, obviously breathing issues, Dr. Niti Gupta. She's out of the Mercy Allergy and Asthma Center. We'll talk with Sean Patterson Howard, who declared a state of emergency. We'll talk with Delpham Husler and talk about the changes being made in Yonkers right now. And I hope Jack Breslin got our message not to come in because we're trying to honor all these rules. So that's how the rest of the hour is going to roll. Right now, the weather's brought to you by United Hebrew of New Rochelle. Voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. It is 43, on its way to 51. The rain hasn't abated fully yet. We've been having light rain off and on all morning. It will give way this afternoon into sunshine and temperatures in the mid-50s. Tonight, clear skies, 34 degrees. Tomorrow, sunny, 53. The average temperature throughout the day. It'll get down to 39 at night before we have rain early Thursday. Temperatures up to 54. And then Friday, spring. Well, it'll feel like spring. Mostly cloudy with scattered showers, though. A high between 70 and 75. Let's see who's on the telephone and welcome them to the broadcast. Good morning. You're on Radio Westchester.
Hey, Bobby, it's Anthony.
Anthony, what's going on?
I wanted to take exception to some of the things Vince said early this morning.
Go ahead.
He talked about the president being a knucklehead and being slow, yet the president stopped flights coming in from China earlier than any other country stopped flights coming in. The president, and you can say in his wisdom or in his stupidity, put the vice president in charge, but the vice president, being a politician, knew he didn't want to be the fall guy. So who's driving the train, Bob?
Well,
Fauci.
actually, I think that the president made a good decision in putting Pence in charge. Being a former governor, he would be much more familiar with these things.
No, but my point being a politician, he wanted to make sure that he wasn't the fall guy.
Well,
so
yes.
Who does he have driving the train? Fauci.
Right.
Okay, so Fauci is the number one infectious disease. Well, I won't say number one. He's in the top 1 percentile of infectious disease doctors in the world.
Go ahead.
And Vince wants to say that he's a knucklehead, that we're slow, that we're not doing what we supposed to be doing or should be doing.
I think that.
Now, listen, I understand the vice president. He's an exception to the rule. He doesn't want to be tested, religious, whatever it is for him. Okay, and I think that's wrong. I absolutely think that's wrong. I think he should be leading by example and say that everyone that needs to be tested, I'm in a high risk group. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be tested. I believe that 110%. So, okay, it is what it is. But here again, this country is built on separating religion from government.
Yes.
Okay. Just like we can't have, Jehovah's Witnesses. If they refuse a life-saving transfusion, it is what it is.
Uh-huh.
So I really don't get where he was coming from, but then again, I do, because he's been a Trump basher from day one.
Well, what happens with Trump, if I may, and I'm not excusing what people say.
Bob, he's not articulate. I understand that.
That's what I was getting at, and I think he takes too much heat.
Every time he comes to the mic, I mean, they asked him to grade himself. He graded himself at 10. I mean, listen, you knew what was coming. I knew what was coming. The reality is no one can get a grade of 10 because this is spreading.
With me, of course, the exception to that. I think you should add that.
Yeah, but you get a 10 on a scale of 100.
Oh, okay. I think what happens, I think Trump does some of the things he does, and it drives people nuts, and they become guilty of hyperbole when they criticize him. Like, the biggest thing I got a kick out of, I was watching him last night. The best, the biggest, phenomenal.
No, listen, but you know the difference, Bob? You expect that before he even gets to the mic.
Yeah, you do now.
If you don't know what's coming, then you're living in alternative reality.
Well, that's true. Well, see, I used to expect that he was going to be a little bit better at that, but I think he's doing well now, and I think even Mike Edelman said he's doing well now. So,
well, he's doing the right thing by giving somebody else the reins,
and rightly so. But even making it like the conversation, as Mike pointed out, that he had with his son, that touches people.
And another thing I wanted to touch on is the free lunch.
Yeah, please, because maybe I'm going too far, but it really troubles me that we have to do this.
I believe, Vince, as a member of government, naturally has more insight to this than I do. Okay, so if he says that there's no really, qualification outside of signing up, therein lies the rub. Because, and don't get me wrong, I want every child to have a good 3 square meals.
Yeah.
Forget about breakfast, whether it's school supplied, government supplied, whatever. Okay, they cannot thrive physically, mentally, in any way, shape, or form unless they're well nourished.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but there's this mindset that we're going to take whatever's free, okay, and divert our funds. Our meaning, this is just the mindset, not you and me when I say our.
Of course, right.
Okay, our funds to wants. Now, I'm going to say this. I know I'm going to get called a racist. I know I'm going to get called everything else.
Well, if they don't, I'll
there
call
are
you
people that I know that are on public assistance. Some on multiple programs who drive better cars than I do and who have better phones than I do.
Yes. But you're not being a racist. You're just declaring a fact.
That should never be allowed to happen. Now, whether they're on government programs and working off the books, I don't know. Okay, because you don't have to be, disabled to be on a government program. There are many programs to qualify for that would naturally, relieve some income to, again, for wants or, as opposed to absolute needs. And outside of the fact that the population is more than we were young, do you actually think the percentage of people who would be considered, poor, put whatever term you want on it,
living in extreme poverty,
is any less than are they, percentage-wise? I know the numbers are different. I have to, because there's more population.
I honestly don't know, but it's a good question. I honestly don't know.
And in our day, it was more family-oriented, making sure that the adults did without to make sure that the kids had, and it was shunned upon to be on public assistance.
Well, yeah, but people figure out how to game everything from
No,
Medicare
again,
cheats
this is a sign of the times. That's
know.
what I'm saying to you. But there has to be a way. Listen, if somebody's on the borderline, I'm not questioning it. But what I'm saying to you is, when you see people driving around in Cadillacs, when you see them with the newest iPhones, there's just that just should not happen, because that absolutely means that somebody that truly, truly deserves it
isn't
maybe going without.
Yeah. Good call. Anthony, thank you very much. And that was weird. All of a sudden, my lights flickered. Why should... It's all I need is a power failure. I'll hang myself outside the studio.
The coronavirus got to the Transformers.
It did. Did you hear what I did? Did you hear me tell Mike what I did to my buddy? I bought one of those styrofoam balls.
Bob. I hate to interrupt you, but you told me this in a private conversation.
I know, but it's for this. That's right, I did, didn't I? It's just something that I did.
I can't wait till you're confined. I hope I'm still around.
Well, that's what he did. He says the most horrible things to me.
Just remember, I remember the story you used to tell about washing a guy in the shower.
Oh,
I think it was Echo, if I'm not mistaken.
I'll tell that. I will tell that story because it's a wonderful story about another brave man, and I was on the very wrong end of people getting even with me for my chop busting. So I will tell that story again today, because I think you got me. Absolute true story, Anthony, and I hate you for bringing it up, but other than that, have a nice day.
You got it, brother. Bye-bye. Happy St. Patty's Day.
Happy St. Patty's Day, one and all. All right, we're about a minute away. We're going to be getting a call from a doctor. This way we can just ask straightaway questions of how best to protect yourself. And when I was preparing to have the doctor on, she was very, very strident about one thing, and that is that if someone has a compromised immune system, someone has pre-existing conditions, do not let them out of the house. All righty, let's take a very quick look at where we are. It is coming up on 7:15. You're listening to Mornings with Bob Marrone. We are the radio station at the train station, a very empty train station, I might say. 1,500 cars here. in the parking lot, and every bus terminates here. That terminates in New Rochelle underneath that rather the 5 or 6 story parking lot, and it is like a ghost town here. And one of the reasons is that people have been asked to not travel. People have been asked to stay home unless they absolutely, positively have to be out, have something to do. Restaurants are closed. They're only delivering takeout. Some we have emergencies declared in the tri-state area where they want businesses to be closed unless they're in a very important service industry by 8 o'clock and so forth. So we thought it would be a pretty good time to get a doctor on who deals with these kinds of things. And I'd like you to welcome for the first time here on Radio Westchester, Dr. Nidhi Gupta. She is with the Mercer Allergy and Asthma Center. She's out of New Jersey. Very talented woman who you'll probably hear a lot more from on our airways. Please welcome Dr. Gupta. Doctor, good morning.
Hi, Bob. Good morning. How are you?
Very well. I have to say very well, but it's very lonely here in the radio station. I had I had an individual who I said, you stay home when you're ready to stay home. If you want to come in and do your sports report, you can, but there's not a lot of sports. So now it's me and myself, and I've told guests all to call in, as is in your case. But I'm fine, and I'll have some decisions to make at some point whether or not I move the studio to a remote location. But I'm fine. But we're here for your wisdom, Doctor. What I'd like to be able to do is give people a sense of how a doctor feels, what we should be doing. Now, in your closing remarks with me as we were preparing for this, one thing you said was people who have pre-existing conditions, who are older or have compromised immune systems should try to not go out at all. And let's start there. How serious is this threat to them?
So it's, that's the population. The elderly, seniors, immunocompromised patients, those with any pre-existing conditions, cardiac, respiratory, those are the people at risk. And the problem, I guess, that's now becoming more apparent is the number of asymptomatic carriers that are walking around. So I don't know if you've heard this whole thing with, the millennials partying it up.
Yeah,
at the bars and restaurants.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the gravity of the situation for younger patients or younger people, they might feel like they have a cold, mild flu-like symptoms and be done with it. So people either could have had the virus or they could have, they could be walking around as asymptomatic carriers, and that's the problem. And that's how the virus is spreading so quickly. So if you're walking around, you're at risk.
Doctor, when why, and I guess it's the nature of a virus, I guess, and immune systems, how come some people have either no symptoms or very mild symptoms? It almost seems for something so potentially deadly.
They're trying to figure that out. I mean, a lot of it does have to do with your immune system. Just from, this is a novel virus, so no one's immune system has potentially seen this. So to develop the immunity against it is an individual to individual, it's on an individual to individual basis. I read yesterday that there are actually 2 strains of the virus right now, and one is supposedly more deadlier than another. So that I'm not too, I don't know too much more about that, except I had read that yesterday. So that could play a part as well in terms of what is the disease presentation.
Now that makes some sense. So that I'm just thinking that 2 forms of virus. That's something that's new to me. Okay, there are also. And we need to talk about hygiene here. There are people who don't have the virus, but that may carry it on their fingers, their clothes. Is it possible for someone to have it on their fingers or their clothes or have bad hygiene, but nonetheless not actually get the virus, but give it to someone else?
Absolutely. I mean, the virus, especially right now with the weather being, on the cooler side, the virus can last. It's called fomites, where it can last on other surfaces. Usually it's spread through, respiratory droplets, so coughing, sneezing, any form of that. So of course, if you're in within 6 feet of someone, you're placing yourself at more risk, and therefore, the whole thing with social distancing, not touching people, not shaking hands, all that does play a part. But again, because of this whole risk with the asymptomatic carriers, I think just being in close proximity around people is enough right now, because we don't know who's infected. Hopefully, as we get more testing kits available, it'll become a bit more apparent, and everyone's, you're going to see a spike in the number of positive cases because those patients will be diagnosed. But it is very, very important for everyone to keep social distancing, and hand wash and all those things that you were taught as a kid.
And that we keep hearing. Our guest is Dr. Nidhi Gupta. She is the head of the Mercer Allergy and Asthma Center in New Jersey, down in the, I guess it's in the Princeton area, East Windsor area.
Mm-hmm.
Doctor, I cut out a column when I was getting ready to talk with you, and it's, quote, "It's dangerous to test only the sick." Why is that? What will be the benefit of testing more people? Will we have better information about the incidence of infectability, how infectability the virus actually is? Why is that important to test everyone if we could?
It's that whole thing, I think, getting back to being an asymptomatic carrier or not presenting with the viral symptoms just yet. Like you could be 5 days in and not manifest symptoms. So if we catch these patients earlier, and then have them quarantine, it's that whole thing with flattening the curve.
Okay.
So.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry, doctor.
Yeah, no. So I was going to say, if they're identified, sometimes they may be healthcare workers. Inadvertently, they're working. I mean, we've done a lot now with closing schools. Children were those people who are walking around, giving it to parents and then grandparents and things like that. So I think closing schools was a great step. And now we're trying to close down non-essential buildings, bars, restaurants, all that kind of stuff. There was a curfew initiated by New Jersey's Governor Murphy yesterday, where you can't leave from 8 p.m. Voluntarily. It's still a voluntary curfew, 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. So everyone's trying. I guess the message is out that stay home as much as you can.
Doctor, one of the things that we're all hopeful for, we hear word that South Korea's virus incidence of people getting it have leveled off. In China, in some locales, it's starting to decline. Why does that happen? Why does it just not keep growing? Does the virus lose its potency? Do less people have it? How does that work?
I think it's just that it's hard to know what exactly the virus is doing because it's still out there. I think the cases that are dropping is because of the infectivity. And I'm not sure about this, but it's that whole thing where the patients who are recovering, it's happening at a faster rate than it's transmitting.
I see.
And then the actual what happens to the virus, I'm not sure about that. What happens, immune-wise, is that you develop immunity to it. When you're infected with anything, you get the flu vaccination. The whole point is that your body makes antibodies against that agent, the virus, the bacteria.
Well, that is. I understand how generally it works, but I know, and I'm going to ask you the same question. Almost every expert we've talked to in this case, because it hasn't yet been demonstrated, when we ask if I've had it and get over it, can I get it again? The answer is we don't know yet.
We don't know yet.
Yeah.
I saw this yesterday from an immune standpoint. Unless the virus mutates and you've pretty much gotten over the virus, quote unquote, it's because you've developed antibodies against it. So theoretically, it doesn't make sense to me that if you have become infected, that you can become reinfected with the same strain.
Right.
That's the whole point. Yeah, and then again, I don't know if if the virus has mutated, if there is another strain, then it is possible to get reinfected.
All right, let's get to what one of your specialties is, because I got the sense when I wanted you to come on about this that
Yeah.
we were missing a segment here. Now, you deal with people with asthma, severe allergies, breathing disorders. It seems to me that even if they're not the elderly, that they would be particularly vulnerable. And I haven't heard a lot of talk about that. Is that instinct on my part valid?
It is valid. Like, I right now is allergy season.
Yes.
So we're calling our patients before they're coming into the office, asking, do you have fever? We can't even screen for, really for any kind of respiratory symptoms, because half my patients are sneezing and having runny nose and, coughing because they have allergies. So, I had a patient yesterday tell me that she was sneezing and she had to turn around and be like, it's allergies, everybody calm down. So it is hard right now to figure out what is going on. I think I think fever chills is one. Fever chills contact with a potential case. That's when we're telling them not to come in. If I have a bad asthmatic, I'm telling them not to come in.
But what should they be doing?
It's just not worth it.
What should they be doing?
If they have asthma symptoms, what I've been told is, in order to reduce the burden on the whole healthcare system, is keep your office open. Outpatient medicine is still happening. I think what we're going to eventually shift to, and I know my husband's office is already doing this, is telemedicine.
Yeah.
So, and it's not ideal. I can't listen to someone's lungs over the phone or through FaceTime, but at least if we can try to do it that way in order to protect, the vulnerable patients, it might be okay.
Dr. Gupta, because one of the things that I should think people would worry about, severe asthmatics, and sometimes in the case of severe asthma, sputum is produced just like if you have a fever, and sometimes if a person is in that state and then they get this virus, would that compound their situation?
Yes, absolutely. It's the patients with pre-existing conditions, asthma, the younger patients who have pre-existing conditions. The elderly who get this either already have these conditions, so it makes it harder, and just by the virtue of their age. But absolutely, patients who have COPD, emphysema, asthma, if they get this virus, they're definitely at risk.
It would seem so. Now, let's look at your prevention. Not your prevention, pardon me. Your business in general. Doctors, I get the sense, and all the doctors I talk to, that no one's really giving you all a lot of clear direction. You're getting the sense that stay open when you can. Certain patients you shouldn't see. Let's go back to the one that you think, I think I present with the virus. I think I have it. Don't come in. But what should they do if they're severely ill? Go to the ER? Or?
Well, now there are thankfully more testing options. A week ago, I was having this conversation with someone, and I gave, my brother-in-law, he's an infectious disease doctor. So I called him up, and I'm like, Andrew, what do I do? And he said, if he doesn't have a fever, he doesn't meet criteria for testing. So I'm like, he's potentially a risk, what to do. He gave me a hotline. In New Jersey has a hotline set up. I gave him the hotline, and he's like, the phone number's been busy for 3 hours.
Yeah.
That was last week. This week, there is testing available. I know, where I live in the Princeton area, the hospital is about to be setting up testing starting Thursday.
Yeah, we have one right here, not far from the radio station over in Glen Island Park, and a number.
Guys, I think there's drive-through testing, right? So
yes,
there are options available, but they are asking doctors to call them to let them know that the patient is en route. So I think once the patient gets there, they meet them with a mask, and they have precautionary things that they're able to do, rather than a patient just show up somewhere.
Okay, so, Dr. Gupta, as the public, we need you and your colleagues in the medical profession to stay safe. We've seen instances around the world where we've lost doctors, including the doctor that identified the disease. What do you do anything different than what you've always done now with this virus, with this pandemic upon us?
I'm washing my hands more. I got to tell you, I'm torn. I'm nervous about coming home. My parents, the kids, all the kids are home, and my parents have to babysit, and they're in their 60s, 70s, and it makes me nervous to come home. Come home. I'm telling them as soon as one of us gets home, you just run to your car. So, but I'm gonna work until someone tells me I can't, or it's becoming dangerous. So I'm hoping that everyone just stays safe and healthy throughout this whole pandemic.
Okay, Doctor, I really appreciate you coming on. Before you go, though, if you would give us the simple step-by-step, what should people be doing as a reminder before you go?
So unless it's essential, don't go outside. If you go outside, what I tell my parents this, I tell my patients this, you go outside, you're going to be touching 1,000 things before you come home. Your keys, your door handle to the car, the shopping cart, who knows whatever you're touching at the grocery store. So in that time period, do not touch your face. The mucous membranes are the entryway for this virus. Eyes, nose, mouth, try to not touch your face, which is sometimes very difficult. And as soon as you do come home, put away your groceries, do everything you need to do, then wash your hands thoroughly. And everyone's been told what to do about that, but ideally, suds seawater. The suds are what gets the virus out. 30 seconds. So I've been told if you sing the ABC song twice, that's getting you to 30 seconds. Thoroughly dry your hands.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a trick. And I sing it in my head. Thoroughly dry your hands.
Go ahead.
I do. I sing it twice. and then then you have to thoroughly dry your hands. So then you should be okay. Hand sanitizer is effective if you don't have soap and water. So sometimes I'll use sanitizer as soon as but it's like you touch one thing, you're done, and so you have to really just kind of pay attention to what you're doing. Hand washing is probably the most important thing, and then the social distancing. Don't go out unless you absolutely have to go out. That means pharmacies, groceries. I can't really see why else you would have to go out, and just limit your contact with people.
And I got the sense, one last question, if I may, and then I want to tell people where your practice is. If you are
elderly
with a pre-existing condition, don't go out at all unless it's...
Don't go out,
There's
so many opportunities now for, using online services. Even if you have to pay a little bit extra, do it. If you have a healthy neighbor who's able to get you a few things on their way out, have them drop it at your door. Things like that. I think you have to get help from the community, help one another out in this kind of time. But try to limit going out. Absolutely.
Well, Doctor, thank you very much. Dr. Nidhi Gupta, she is a specialist in allergy and asthma out of the Princeton area, New Jersey, East Windsor. In fact, it's the Mercer Allergy and Asthma Center that she runs. Doctor, what's your phone number if people need your services?
Absolutely. So it's 609-371-6222.
Give it out a second time, please.
Sure, 609-371-6222.
Doctor, thank you. And as you know, we will be having Dr. Gupta on again. My original intent was the allergy season's coming. I have so many questions about it. A lot of us have been tested and have 87,000 allergies. How do we deal with it? We'll be talking with you down the road, Doctor. Thank you very, very much. Dr. Nidhi Gupta, everybody.
Thanks again, Bob. Be safe. Wash your hands.
Thank you. I'm going to wash them right now. My fingers are all over the place, Doctor. All righty. It is 8:33. And our next guest, in fact, we just pushed everybody just back a little bit because we went with the state of emergency that she declared yesterday. We want to give her another few minutes. But we will be hearing momentarily from Sean Patterson Howard, the mayor of Mount Vernon. And after that, we're going to be talking with Delphine Huschler. He is the managing editor and the publisher of the Yonkers Insider and a number of other news outlets, and talk about how Yonkers is handling the virus. And for those of you who are just joining us, we had a state of emergency declared in the tri-state area yesterday, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. And between the hours of 8 p.m. and 5 in the morning, they're asking for a voluntary, it's not mandatory, but a voluntary curfew. Don't come out unless you have to come out. They've asked businesses to close by then, except the essential businesses, gas stations, drugstores, etc., food stores, of course. But even food stores have been put on a limited number of hours. Here in Westchester County, things have gotten likewise very strict. We had a declaration yesterday from the county executive, George Latimer. State of emergency is here now. We also have, and that ringing that you hear is because we're going to put her on the phone. We had a state of emergency declared yesterday in Mount Vernon, and a couple of stories out of Mount Vernon, closing businesses during the state of emergency. But she is proposing, the mayor of Mount Vernon, a 5 p.m. voluntary curfew and wants high-risk businesses to close. Also, we're seeing that a case is prompting a partial quarantine of a rehab facility in Mount Vernon. With us to talk about that is Mayor Sean Patterson Howard. Good morning, Mayor. How are you?
Good morning, Bob. How are you doing?
Well, we're doing okay here, but Mayor, you became mayor at a good time, cleaning up messes, doing all kinds of audits, and now this we see in the news where you declared a state of emergency last night. Tell us why and what for, what things you're concerned about, how the city's handling it, and then even about this nursing home we understand has a problem. Speak to us.
Well, Bob, as a leader, sometimes we have to make hard decisions, and decisions that not everyone will understand because they don't always have the same information as you, nor do they have the same responsibility that you have. And my responsibility is to an entire city. And while I understand that we are kind of interfering with some people's conveniences and then also some people's income, I believe that the public health interests supersede everything at this time, and we need to be focused on that. Here in Mount Vernon, we're not panicking, but we are preparing, we are planning, and we are focusing on prevention. And so with that said, we did declare a state of emergency yesterday. That did go a little bit beyond what the governor and the county executive have mandated at this time. And, the difference that we have asked or that we ordered here in our community is that we shut down our nail salons, our beauty parlors, our barbershops, and any type of massage parlor or makeup, hands-on makeup place.
Sure.
Not a makeup store where you buy makeup, but places where you to go and get your makeup done. So we've shut down those businesses. Those businesses are very high personal contact and touch. With lots of exposure opportunities. And so we decided to close those businesses as well. We're on the front end. We are very much on the front end of this virus. If you pay attention to Trump's press conference on Sunday and his press conference on Monday, they were very different. Mm-hmm. They took very, very different tones. One said, we're in control of this. We have this under control. And then when they asked him the next day, no, we didn't say we have this under control. We've gone from big assemblies to 500 to 50 to now the recommendation coming out of the White House is 10. And when you look at what San Francisco did yesterday, 7 million people are put on a shelter-in-place mandate.
Yep.
And a shelter-in-place mandate. And I think that was a very brave move.
It really was.
It's a brave move. People do not want their conveniences to be interfered with, but sometimes, like I said, we have to make the hard decision. And it's not out of panic and it's not out of fear. Sometimes it's really, really out of necessity.
Well, obviously, you've made those decisions in your city. Before we get into how they're received and what your larger concerns are, we saw the story. There's a rehab facility in your town called the Westchester Center for Rehabilitation and Nursing. There's a partial quarantine there, but also we noted complaints from patients Now, that's obviously not in your purview in any direct way, but what are you hearing and what do you know about it?
Right now what we're hearing at the Westchester Rehabilitation Center is that there was one person that was transferred out for suspected exposure and impact with coronavirus. So they were transferred to a hospital and they are being treated. Right now, we do not have literally the testing confirmation on that, but it's suspected. So, the nursing home has done what they've needed to do. They've put themselves pretty much on lockdown. They have limited and restricted movement within the nursing home. They've asked for friends and family from outside not to visit at this time, and they are taking the necessary precautions that they need to prevent the further spread potentially of what we believe to be a case of coronavirus. So that's where they are right now. We do understand that a roommate was tested and tested negative. These things are very important to us here in the city of Mount Vernon, as we want to make sure that not only are the nursing home and rehabilitation residents safe, but the staff that treats them that are safe, as well as our first responders that have to go in and respond to issues, whether it's police or fire or DPW that's picking up the garbage. So, we want to make sure that we are partnering with them to ensure that this situation is managed properly. And there are a lot of unanswered questions because this is a new crisis here, and we're all learning each day, and it's changing from hour to hour.
It definitely is. As you noted, the change in tone from what came out of the White House, the situation got worse over a 2-day period. Now, how many confirmed? Do you have any numbers for your city? How many confirmed cases do you have? We haven't seen a lot in the news about it, but obviously we're concerned.
So this is the challenge around confirmation. Right now, testing is still being done on a national level, and it's under the direction of the CDC. So we have one confirmed case that we know about. Mm-hmm. We have other suspected cases where people have been tested, and we are waiting on test results. Test results right now are taking on average of 5 to 7 days with regular cases. We have heard incidences of people who've called and tried to get testing, and they were turned down for testing. So there's a lot of information and misinformation out there, and we don't want to continue to spread any misinformation. But I can tell you right now that I do not believe that we have an accurate count of the number of people at this moment that are infected. I don't want to say it's 50 or 100. I don't believe that. But we don't have an accurate count as of this moment.
Well, and the other thing, Mayor, what makes the decisions you've made resonate is Mount Vernon is an interesting city in that it borders many, many others. You border New Rochelle. You border Pelham. You border Bronxville. You border, I guess, I don't even know if it's parts of Yonkers. It's a part of geography, but you border parts of the Bronx, I think. You are in a very interesting place. So you have a big role. You're in the middle of the belly of the beast yourself.
We are. I mean, Mount Vernon is a major transit hub in the region between our 3 Metro North stations.
I was going to say, the only city with 3.
The only city with 3 Metro North stations on 2 different lines. We also are the ending community for 2 subway lines, both the 2 and the 5. Many of the highways intersect and touch the borders of Mount Vernon. So we have lots of people from the region going through our community every day. Mount Vernon has major bus hubs for the county of Westchester in our downtown, where we have over 10 different bus routes coming through our community. So we have a lot of people that come through our community from other communities, and we are one of the most densely populated communities in the state and also within the country. 20,000 people per square mile.
Yep.
And so, we have to make sure that we are taking all precautions, that we're not just, that we're trying to prevent this. But we have to take action right now. We can't think about, I think last week we were talking about the abundance of precaution, and now we've moved into making necessary decisions to protect our community.
Now, Mayor, have you had support from the city council with your declaration? Are they on board with this?
Absolutely, absolutely. On Saturday evening, we called an Sunday evening, we called an emergency meeting. We had all 5 of our city council members either present physically in the meeting or via conference call. We also had our Senator Alexandra Biaggi, our Senator Jamal Bailey, our Assemblyman Gary Pretlow, our County Legislator Lyndon Williams. We had representation from Congressman Elliot Engel's office, as well as many of the key leaders here in Mount Vernon, and Chief Odendo, who is our incident command for the city of Mount Vernon as it relates to coronavirus. So we had more than 20, 25 key leaders in the room and about 10 key leaders on the phone. And as I said before, I'm a person who works with our partners on all levels of government, and we came together and understood the critical nature of this. We understand the unique situation that Mount Vernon is in that we do not have a fully operating hospital. And because we do not have a fully functioning hospital, we cannot take this casually. We don't have Sound Shore. We don't have White Plains Hospital.
Mayor,
we have services that St. John's and St. Joseph's have. We do not have that here in Mount Vernon. Mount Vernon Hospital has been operating on declining resources for the past 10 years, and they've sped that up even in the past 6 months. Our emergency room has been closed to EMS, major critical cases over the last few weekends. They've been diverting EMS calls to the other regional hospitals.
You're kidding? Why?
They've been transferring our patients out of the Mount Vernon Hospital, again, over the last few weeks.
Mayor,
week to other hospitals.
Mayor, is that because of the incidence of the virus or just a lack of resources at the hospital, at the ER?
There are a lack of resources at the hospital. You know, as we know, Montefiore Mount Vernon is pretty much in shutdown mode. They've been in shutdown mode for months. They've been transferring contracts and other things over to Sound Shore and their other regional healthcare facilities. And so that has left Mount Vernon without an ICU. That has left Mount Vernon without the ability to do some key x-rays on the weekend. The services.
So if you would go back, Mayor, so where are your patients being sent?
Our patients are being sent to Sound Shore. They're being sent to Montefiore Moses. Now, I love Montefiore Moses, but we know that their emergency room is the second busiest emergency room in the United States, second only to LA County.
Wow.
And so when you continue to decrease the services that you are providing one of the most densely populated communities in the country, and you're sending them to Monty Moses, which we know is already overcrowded. Look, my mother is a patient. She's been a patient. She used to work there. And my mother sat in the hallway for like a day and a half.
Oh, my goodness.
On a cart.
I just want to reset for folks who are listening in, especially from Mount Vernon and surrounding communities. Our guest is the mayor of Mount Vernon, Shawn Patterson Howard. She has, for her city, declared a state of emergency with her own curfew times, even tighter than elsewhere. Mayor, one of the things that we can hope for, at least I've been talking about this all morning, is your need for a better hospital facility in your city, or certain minimally a trauma center, but hopefully more. The fact that in general we were really not prepared as a nation for this crisis. B, the fact that this has also shown a light on the incredibly large numbers of children that need food. In fact, some schools not wanting to close. Are you hopeful that there will be that this crisis will shed a light on these problems?
Definitely. Look, we are calling on the governor. He did put out communication yesterday that we need to expand the hospital beds in our region, that we have a shortage of hospital beds, that we are not necessarily prepared to meet the apex of this virus in our region. Mount Vernon Hospital has 121 beds. Many of them right now are not being used. We have an entire sixth floor with 40 beds on it that has been shut down for years. We have an ICU unit with 12 beds that is not operating. We have other floors right now that have beds that are available. Yes, we can call in the Army Corps of Engineers to work and build and put up tents and create temporary facilities, but you have a full facility right here. And we've heard, Mount Vernon Hospital is part of the plan and we can activate some of the beds for this particular reason, but there does not seem to be any real commitment of ensuring that they're going to put the resources in our hospital that we need for the long run. We do not need an urgent care facility with an emergency room. We need a comprehensive medical facility. My thing that I've said to Monty over and over again, if you truly go through your medical system and you pull out zip codes of 105, 50, 51, 52, and 53, you will see that many Mount Vernon residents are using Montefiore's health system throughout the region. It's not that we don't have confidence in their medical services. We do not have confidence in the medical services that they are providing sometimes at the hospital. It's not the nurses and the doctors that are deficient. It is the resources that they are putting into the hospital. We need people to understand that this is not about Mount Vernon losing medical care. If our hospital is closed, then our residents are going to be forced to go to Lawrence and New Rochelle. Their hospitals are already overworked and overstaffed. And understaffed. We've seen waiting times in their ERs increasing, and we've seen care and in their facilities shifting. And so if you take away our hospital, it's like if you're quiet now when they shut down our hospital, because it might temporarily benefit your hospital, what's going to happen when they decide, we want to make a bigger regional plan and we're going to divert resources from your hospital now?
Wow.
People tend to have a very short view of challenges.
And absolutely.
I can tell you back in, I believe, June, no, not June, I think it was October or November, we had a town hall meeting at Grace Baptist Church, and there was a doctor there who said, what will happen if some type of plague or major public health crisis hits our community and we don't have a hospital? How will we prepare? And at that time, everyone really took her kind of lightly, Dr. Church lightly, because none of us had seen an epidemic or a pandemic of this sort, I think, probably in our lifetime.
No, none of us have. And you know what, Mayor?
Far away.
You know what, Mayor? We just did. Mayor Sean Patterson Howard, if you would, before you go over what your emergency declaration means, what it prescribes, and what's open, what's not.
Okay, and just the food insecurity issue. Food insecurity is very important. We are working with Feeding Westchester, and they will be delivering 2 tractor-trailer loads of food here to Mount Vernon on Wednesday so that we can box it and distribute it to our seniors and some of our families on Friday. So we will be putting out more information. Our state of emergency here in Mount Vernon, the additional declarations that we've made beyond what the county executive and the governor have made, is that we are closing beauty salons, barbershops, nail salons, massage parlors, and places where people go to get facials and makeup done. Those are very high-touch, high-contact places where exposure risks are very high. You can't get your hair done or your eyebrows threaded or your nails done without almost being able to smell the breath of the person who is providing service
this is true.
to you. That's very, very close contact. And, for people not to understand that and take that into consideration, it concerns me. I've worked in public health since 1985 in the midst of the AIDS crisis and hepatitis and things of that nature. And so as an elected official and someone with a background in public health, I took what I felt was an appropriate public health response. We have not issued a curfew, but we are strongly suggesting and advising our residents to stay in their homes between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. We want to make sure that our city resources are directed where they need to go. We want people to decrease their social contact, and so staying in the house, especially when restaurants and bars and gyms are closed and stores are closed by that time. Outside of going to the doctor, going to food shopping, and going to the pharmacy, there's really nothing to do. Parks and playgrounds are closed because there's no way for us to constantly sanitize that playground equipment, and children need to be home with their families. So those are some of the extra measures that we've taken here in Mount Vernon. We are asking our retail businesses at the close of business day, starting tomorrow, to only operate between the hours of 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. Once again, because we want to decrease social contact. We're asking that even if people are shopping, don't just browse. Go get what you need to get.
And
get
move
out
your butt out of
the
there.
home.
Yeah.
A lot of these contacts, a lot of these surfaces, as you're just browsing and touching and browsing and touching, if someone's been coughing, you just don't know what the impact of that is going to be. So we really want people to put their personal conveniences aside right now and understand that their personal health is more important. No one values their health until they lose it.
Well, that is so true.
We
Mayor,
take our health for granted.
Mayor, I want to thank you for your time. I know you have a lot to do. Now, Mayor, if you need to make any special announcements and get the word out, call me on my cell, call me at the station. We'll put you on the air right away. Thank you, Mayor Sean Patterson Howard, doing a good job. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bob. Have a good day.
All right, take care. We're going to get to our next guest in just a moment after we reset. You're listening to Radio Westchester. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. We are live at a very empty train station here. We've had no one in the studio today because, well, we're honoring the request to keep human contact. Now, we did reach our guest who comes in about 10 after 9. And we told him to call in, but we don't know if he will do that or got the message. But we're going to go straight to our next guest now for an update in terms of what's going on in the great city of Yonkers. So we follow his work. He's a newsman there. He is the managing editor, publisher of the Yonkers Insider, and he also does a number of other, including broadcasting on the web, news outlets. Please welcome Del from Huesler. Del, good morning.
Good morning, Bob. Thank you so much for having me on your radio show.
No,
always enjoy coming on, discussing what's going on in the great city of Yonkers.
Well, you guys you were a little late to the party, I guess, with closing your schools, but now you had no choice. But your schools are closed. Has your city declared a state of emergency yet? And what are the concerns coming out of Yonkers?
Yes, actually, the mayor this past week, and I believe it was on Saturday, declared a state of emergency. There's issues having to do now with, especially with the schools closing. There's issues about how some of the school workers or school staff's going to get paid because the situation is the issue now is people having money during these times. Especially, we don't know how long this closings is going to be. So it's very concerning, and also to see that everybody stays safe as well during these times as well.
Now, isn't the issue in your city going to be what with taxes down, businesses closed? I mean, the union is going to be sure that the teachers get paid. The question is, how's the city going to pay for it if the coffers are slowed down?
That's true. No, that's true. I know. I was at the press conference yesterday at the Yonkers Board of Education, and the mayor was asked that question, and the mayor had said he's been discussing with Governor Cuomo, because also Governor Cuomo recently rescinded the rule of 180 days of school days. So there's a lot of issues going on in the city of Yonkers. Like I say, in the Yonkers, there seems to always be a lot of issues, and it's just a matter of us getting on the right plane. Although I'm confident, maybe cautiously optimistic that things are going to work out in Yonkers. It's just a matter of all of us getting together, I think.
Now, what is the mood in the city? Is for example, here in New Rochelle, it's a ghost town. We don't have very many people coming to the train station at all. Mm-hmm. The streets are relatively empty. People are following the rules to stay in. What about in your city?
Yonkers, I think there's a lot of people. I guess because things are changing as things are changing from the normal now. I think that there are a lot of people trying to get used to the new normal at this moment, in terms of the restaurants closing at 8 o'clock at night. So it's especially with today being St. Patrick's Day and stuff. So I think that's another issue as well. I think people are starting to get used to it, but I think it's very hard to get used to. Like you said, New Rochelle's a ghost town. I think Yonkers will eventually be a ghost town as well. It's just like I said. Hopefully this doesn't last a long time. Hopefully it's sooner we go back to normal sooner rather than later.
Well, it's probably the president yesterday said we may not actually get back to normal until
That's
July
true.
or so. But the larger concern again is for the health of people. Now, how is the hospital there? I know you have, I guess it's St. Joseph's Hospital. Is the hospital being overwhelmed?
We have we have St. Joseph, St. John's,
St. John?
also Lawrence Hospital, which is in Bronxville, but
Right.
since Bronxville and Yonkers are close together, there seems to be some concerns about maybe overburdening other hospitals. It'd be interesting to see how that moves forward, if there isn't overburdening in terms of the hospitals and stuff like that.
Wow. So you got some of the same issues there. What other stories are you following? Anything that people need to know?
Me personally, well, actually, another thing which I was apprised of on the weekend was that the governor did an executive order where he is ending the petition process as of 5 o'clock today.
Now, what does that mean? Ending the petition? I saw that.
That means the candidates can collect up to 5 o'clock today, and then the collection of signatures is over, and then it has to be filed with the Board of Elections, and then see how the process works. That's also another issue as well, because the question is going to be: is there going to be a primary in June? If, like the president said yesterday, this is going to go on through July and possibly August, what's the situation going to be with the primary and everything? So
well, I don't think they know. I did the story earlier that one of the four primaries scheduled for tonight, the one in Ohio, has been canceled, or at least postponed. So I think we're
also Georgia and Louisiana also canceled their primaries. Also canceled their
I
primaries.
wasn't aware of that. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
that happened on the weekend.
Okay. Well, that's two more that got canceled. So you're concerned. Well,
I think the election process is also becoming a victim in all of this as well, because I think the election process, it'd be interesting to see what ends up happening in terms of what the governor ultimately decides, because it ultimately comes down to him and the state legislature as to what's going to happen. I'm happy that the petition process is over, because a couple people who I know were collecting signatures, and they were having a difficult time because no one's answering the doors, because people are afraid these days.
Yeah, they really are. One more question with
Yes.
regard to the election, or actually regard to your public figures. The mayor here, the county executive, the governor have all been given high marks for the way they've handled it. How is your mayor, Mike Spano, doing?
I think Mayor Spano is doing a good job. He's doing the best he humanly can. He's trying to do what's best for the citizens of Yonkers. I feel so far he's done a good job. I give him high grades and high marks so far in the process.
Well, let's hope he continues. Now, before you go, I know we have the Yonkers Insider and people go to your website, but you've also been doing some broadcasting and streaming. What else are you working on where people can hear your news and what you do?
What I'm basically doing is, like I said, I've been doing recently the Facebook Live broadcast, which I do on a weekly basis. In terms of, I try and do a couple of Yonkers Insider reports twice a week, and also whatever events I can cover, which like I said, I covered the Yonkers Board of Education press conference. I always try and make it to as many press conferences as humanly possible in terms of providing the Facebook Live gives me an opportunity to provide more news than I had in the past, because it was just writing before. Now it's video, so that's another thing I've been working on. Also, we continually actually each and every day post news on my blog. Can I give my web address?
Absolutely. That's why I was going to ask you, where can people remember when you come on, you get to promote what you're doing. That's that's the only way we can say thank you.
I got two websites. It's delphimusla.com and also my Yonkers Insider blog newspaper, www.yankersinsider.blogspot.com.
All right, give it out a second time. Give them both another time.
Okay, www.yankersinsider.blogspot.com and also delphimusla.com.
All right, Del, keep us informed. Now, remember, as I've said to all...
Thank you so much, and I'll be on next week. Thank you so much,
Okay, listen,
Bob.
before you go...
Have a pleasant day.
Before you go, if anything breaks in your city, you need to get it out on the air, you give me a call and we'll put you on.
I definitely will. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Del Husler, everyone. And it's time to go to our next guest. Now, he has called in on our usual line that we've had trouble in, so we'll see if the clicking's gone out of it. It's like the old Honeymooner episode. Could you get the clicking out of the phone? If not, we'll ask him to call our hotline. Please welcome, without further ado, he's with us each and every Tuesday. Usually he comes in, but what we've done is we've been complying with the request to not have a lot of people physically in the studio. It's just me and my bottles of disinfectant. Please welcome, without further ado, Mass Communications and Ethics. He's a professor at Iona College with those topics. Please welcome Jack. Sir, yeah, there we go. Oh, my. Okay, Professor, we're going to ask you. I hope you can hear me because I'm getting a lot of static on the line. I am going to call you on... Professor, I'm going to call you on another line at the same number you are calling us, so you can hang up. Oh, no, it's Latimer. Okay. 0604. Oh, God. Okay, that's George Latimer calling. Bear with us, folks. We're getting the county executive is calling in, and we want to get him on the air. 9670. Sorry about that. This particular thing, it is Latimer calling. All righty. 563 563 563 603. Bear with me, folks. This is our special hotline. You're listening to Radio Westchester. We're obviously live and trying to get in touch with a guest, so bear with us. Hi, who's this? Is this Professor Breslin? Okay, yeah, I'm sorry about that. That other line wasn't working very well, so stay right there. And we've got to hang up the other line, so please switch to this one. Sorry about that, folks. We've had a number of people try and get a hold of us, and I just got to be sure we haven't missed any other calls. We have a tracker, so you bear with me, and I know there was a little dead air there, but you can see me struggling because I can't have anybody else in the studio right now because of the virus, so I'm a one-man band, but that's how we roll. Once again, I reintroduce him, Professor Jack Breslin, Mass Communications and Ethics. Please welcome Jack Breslin. Professor, I love when you come in person, but it's still nice to have you in this instance. Oh, Professor. Did I? Oh, wait. There he is. I guess I didn't put the right button on, so I got to do it again. I have to admit now, folks, that I hit the wrong button, and I accidentally put him off. I hit the wrong button. Stay right there. For the third time, Professor Jack Breslin, good morning, sir. Sorry about that.
Yes, good morning, Bob.
I'm working all by my lonesome here, and believe me when I tell you, if I'm going to count up the number of people that I've seen since 5 o'clock this morning, and it hasn't topped 12. And that's how quiet it is here at the train station, Doctor.
Mm-hmm. So the trains are running, but people aren't on them.
Right, you got it. So I'm wondering at what point they go to weekend schedules. And it's probably an opportune time to ask you, what is your opinion of how the media is covering this crisis?
Well, I think in the beginning there was a lot of misinformation, and it was difficult to get the right information out of some sources. But I think now there was a bit of sensationalism going on, particularly since I am in the containment zone. Information got to my friends, and hard to believe I do have friends around the world. We're calling frantically that, are you getting enough food, and, are you under martial law, and all this kind of stuff. And people blamed it on news reports, and going back and checking apparently there were some leaks before the governor's press conference that were exaggerated about the role of the National Guard, for example. But I think that has calmed down significantly, and now they are taking a more mediative role of reassuring people and getting out the latest information. The challenge sometimes is that there is no news and new information, yet you have to fill airtime, you have to pull a podcast or a blog, and you have to write a story.
Well,
and
yes.
So there's a tendency to go into a little exaggeration, but now you're covering the people and letting them talk, and I think that's very important in the linkage role, the transmission of values that the media provides as well as just information.
Well, did you see the headline and the front page? It was horrible what the Daily News did with the National Guard being called out to New Rochelle, which I thought was, while it was well intended by the governor, and I think all people feel he's been doing a good job, it was a tactical mistake because it made it look like we were living in an armed camp.
Exactly.
Now, was that irresponsible? Was that irresponsible? And if you owned the Daily News, I mean, certainly it got eyeballs. But would you have been upset with the people that put that headline out there?
Yeah, and being in the zone, and as I just said, people being panicked about what was happening to us here. Also, some of the news stories that were on the air, particularly one that was done about Iona on Fox 5, people were very disturbed about that, that the person who did it, who has Iona connections, said about a certain place, there's nobody there. Well, there was nobody there to begin with. It's a smaller place and usually doesn't attract the student crowd. And, of course, they had dismissed early for break, and so, of course, nobody's going to be there. And then just grabbing sound bites of fear and panic, and that happened up here in the containment zone. That's why I stayed away from
wisely so. Well, I drove up there, and what we saw was, the classic press scrum. They had nobody to talk to. Nobody was there, so they grabbed anybody they could get, and they chased them down the street. And here at the train station, and again, it's the nature of TV news, which I did for a little while, and it just wasn't something you know the difference. You've been in the biz long enough. TV news is very different than what we do here. Everything is very short. You go and you get a shot of the location. You do your 5-minute story. They cut it to 70 seconds, and you go on to the next thing. And some editor-in-chief of the news broadcast decides what they're going to hear and spins it any way they like. And so they come out here, they dress themselves all fancy at the train station, and they kind of ask questions that had to do with fear, and I guess that's the drill. It was very disappointing.
Yeah, I saw that way back in my America's Most Wanted days, that a lot of times, especially younger reporters, would have a idea for a story, and they would go call around all of our law enforcement contacts until they got someone to agree with them, to slant the story their particular way. Or even a case where we had done a show with Oprah Winfrey, and it resulted in a capture in Italy. And the Inquirer went around to all the sources they could get to finally get somebody to say, oh, if it wasn't for Oprah, they wouldn't have caught that guy. And that was the whole angle of the story. America's Most Wanted, who brought the case to them, was buried in the bottom of the story. Now, okay, we got a tremendous amount of publicity. We caught a bad guy. We gave victims closure. But I was really, the only thing I could do was laugh at the way this so-called reporter who taped the call, okay, this is the National Enquirer calling, and I am so-and-so, because they had gotten nailed so many years ago over the Cal Burnett story. And so here they were, the least paragon of American journalism, pretending to do a straight story, and it was terribly slanted. Now, meanwhile, up here, my friends will kid me, you never met a microphone or camera you didn't like. But I went over to get a cup of coffee and then pick up a prescription. Well, the CVS had closed, but the little sign at the door did not say, go call another CVS. So I shouted to the door, can we get our prescriptions to CVS? They started laughing. I said, I don't think this is very funny, ladies. And I turn around, there's a camera. But it was across the street. And I'm like, okay, you're going to be on the news now, pal. But the camera wasn't set up yet. So they started waving to me, and I just kept walking. Then I knew what they were going to do. And I just wasn't going to go along with it.
My guest, Professor Jack Breslin, Mass Communications and Ethics, he's with us each Tuesday at 9 o'clock as I look out here from the studios of Radio Westchester to an absolutely just still train station here in New Rochelle. What about the way the president's been covered? It's impossible to cover the president and not have politics weave into it, whether it's he's trying to contain or at least keep his image solid for the upcoming election. And Democrats are naturally going to be tempted to call out his verbal faux pas, of which there are many. How would you rate how they're covering him?
Well, I would think that they are focusing on what he is saying rather than how he is saying it in order to reassure people. Because, as you just said, there have been some problems in the way that the White House has addressed this issue, particularly in the early days, to call it a hoax and something that the other party is doing to damage him. That's just beyond shocking. Yet, there are folks who will say, well, he's right. It's a big thing. The Chinese developed this whole thing and sacrificed their people in order to take over the world. And so there are folks who will go along with what he says no matter what. I'm back down in New Rochelle right now. I'm going to go back upstate eventually because we're doing some stuff at I.O. to prepare to go online. Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, I was taking a little walk along a very historic part of the Ulster County where the old D&H Canal used to be, Creek Locks Road there. And thinking about what it was back in the 1820s when they were hauling coal and freight and everything else along the canal. And there was this flag outside of a house, and the two people who lived there, Trump 2020, no more BS, the word spelled out. And I didn't stop. I just kept walking going, well, have they been watching the news lately? But those people, no matter what he says, they're going to back him up. So I think that the press has been covering the White House, of course. When the president talks, that's news, especially in a time of a national crisis. But at the same time, the way that the White House has been responding to this has been very troubling.
Would he be?
Cuomo, okay, he's a Democrat. I'll give him kudos and say that he's been a little more presidential. And of course, I said previously that there wouldn't be a majority going into the convention and he would get the nomination. Okay, ain't over yet. But in the meantime, I'm very concerned about the way the president has addressed this now. He's, I guess, starting to wake up. Would that be the word? And so at least the press isn't harping on his performance. They're more giving information and trying to reassure people.
I think one of the problems that the president has, and I don't enjoy saying this because we're at a time you don't want to dump on your leaders, but from a optics point of view, it was interesting after 3 years to actually see the Sphinx speak, and that is Mike Pence. And it was a reminder that men and women who've done this all their lives, governors such as Mr. Pence, such as Vice President Pence and Cuomo, they're much more on message and controlling of what they say than the president, who, as a sales guy, and I'm almost saying this to give him a bit of a pass, is 60% adverbs and adjectives. Phenomenal, the best, the nicest, the quickest, the most important, the phenomenal, and incredible. But does the president realize, or do his handlers realize, that in a situation like this, not running a rally, because he speaks in ways the people that follow him love, which is a whole nother story for another day, but the more he speaks, the more he hurts himself right now? Do they know that?
That's been a concern, that he doesn't know the art of the soundbite. And the conversation consistently goes back to himself. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the problems that he's had, is that for so many years he has been able to manipulate the media into covering him and just talking off the cuff, you would say, and not being really responsible about his facts. But now that he is a leader of the free world and people are depending on what he says, I think some of his handlers are able to get him more focused on message. But then when he is more spontaneous, he tends to go off the topic and exaggerate and just sometimes make stuff up.
It must be so hard with a man this powerful, and this is in deference to the president or any president, because that was one of my past lives. I was a speechwriter and coach, and I worked with one particular executive who was like Trump, and worse than Trump. And the whole deal was, we had to, the way we worked with him was to really get him to understand the point that there are times when you're giving a speech, a formal speech with a message to be given, that you are not there as you per se. You are there as an instrument to deliver the message, and you want to look good doing it. If you want to talk off the cuff, that's for other situations, rallies, charities, things like that. But when you are delivering a message, if we've prepared a speech or even a slideshow, and let's do it in rehearsal, you've got to commit to that, because you've got to accept that you're your own worst enemy when you wing it. And I tell you, that is a tough job, because you're almost always doing it for a person who's your boss. But if you can't do it, you can't do that job. You've got to get the guy. You've got to get him to see where he's without a seatbelt. And I guess being such a powerful man who's been successful, it's got to be hard. I mean, I had a joke that I used to tell guys I wrote for that was, when we do a rehearsal on tape, and then I'd say, for a hostage tape, it wasn't bad, but I don't think anybody dare say that to the president.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the biggest problem he has right now is not being able to do his rallies, and people hanging on his every word and cheering him on, even when he says things that are potentially inflammatory or just downright false.
Yes.
But what, as you say, in the transition from strictly entertainment scripted shows to reality shows, the publicity model had to change. Mm-hmm. And before, you would just had stars who were talking about the shows. Some of them loved the limelight and would talk about their personal lives and others, but it was very, even in the publicity, it was very scripted. Whereas when we got into reality shows, and especially we were dealing with ordinary people, some of them would say things that we'd have to pull them back a little bit and say, if you want to go out and give a speech and say, I am saying this as a private citizen or as an advocate, that's fine. But right now, you are the host of a very popular Fox television show, and we are not going to get on the phone and defend what you are saying. Mm-hmm. And the particular individual was had a huge ego and was very offended by that and knifed me in the back over it. but I was working for Fox, and it was my job to tell him to tone it down. Of course, he didn't, and I wound up leaving. He didn't. But it was very troubling to me that, this person just would not listen to anything we were saying. That he knew everything, and okay, fine, go ahead. But that's the way it wound up. Makes good stories for class, though.
You know where people are unfair to the president, and I try not to be in this one way. If you're going to criticize someone, as I do, in his case, for being inarticulate and having difficulty grasping words, there are times when people know what he means, but then they hold him and attack him for the words he used. And I know that's fair game in politics, but when you know this even goes all the way back. Now, I'm someone that believes that the Russians tried to help him win, that they hacked the election. I thought the people that they convicted should stay convicted. And I wanted to get that out of the way. I thought Mueller was a wuss bunny who will go down in history as a quisling for not drawing conclusions. But that said, when the president said on TV during his campaign, I'm asking the Russians to look at that server, everyone knows he was just being a windbag. But if I've had to hear it once, I've heard it 1,000 times. He asked the Russians right on television. Or like when he says, when this washes through. That's how he intuits that this virus is going to wash through the population. And now those are not the best words, Mr. President, because people are going to die. But so they sort of hold him to that as a literal statement. And that's called, what are the responsibilities of the press? To capture essence or say gotcha?
Well, I think there is both the idea of the watchdog, and as the other metaphor is the lapdog, and so you got to find something in the middle that the guard dog then does not become a lapdog and just say everything that the master says,
Yes.
repeats everything that the master says. But I've noticed in some of the press conferences where he is taking questions that some of the reporters will challenge him right back,
Yes.
like, well, that's not what you said before. And, all right, you're correct. But at a time like this, as you said, go write your story later about that. Right now, you're on live. People are listening to the leader of the United States and looking for reassurance. Mm-hmm. And so, okay, he, as they say about Reagan, misspoke, but give him a little chance and let's move on, get to what he has to say. And if you want to put Judge on your podcast later, fine, go right ahead. But, don't turn a White House press conference during this crisis into a gotcha type of confrontation.
And I mean, again, I'll be watching him. I'll say, my God, it's awful. What an idiot. But I'm really talking about the way he strings words together. And again, he's disingenuous a lot of the time, the way guys at the far end of the bar are spouting about what they would do, except this is the first time in history where the guy at the end of the bar and his attitude got elected president. But it's a genuine an attitude. And if 51% of the people want it or a quorum when we elect, then we have to accept that. But I do think that they're unfair with him when he has his malaprops and so forth, and he has many. So in terms of kids, and this is going to be a tough question for you, but I'm sure you've read, and I shouldn't call them kids, but down in Florida, our wonderful millennials are going to bars and partying it up, not realizing that they may hurt people, and they're being characterized as not caring and selfish. Are they not caring and selfish, or teenagers, which we all were as teenagers, or are they not really informed enough? Do they not really understand what's going on? Or, thirdly, have they just lost respect for either the president and the press, or both?
Well, if this was multiple choice, I would go with D, all of the above. That you can't tell me they're not properly informed, whereas if in these particular communities, particularly a town that depends upon tourism and depends on spring break, whether they are ignoring what's going on, I'd like to think that the public officials are not ignoring it and saying, okay, We know you're down here to party and have a good time, but we're in a national crisis, and it's not a good idea for you to be gathering. Now, meanwhile, today in St. Patrick's Day, how many folks are going to have quiet little private parties at their homes with 10 or more people?
Yes,
Well,
some Guinness. I know.
that's not the purpose of the National Guard to go out and find out. But at the same time, if this is going on, that is grossly irresponsible.
And is there? I mean, what is the difference? And without making a judgment about it, what is the difference between these young people today that you educate them, you see them every day? I've been guests at several colleges, and I've always been impressed with them. So because I don't see them every day, but there is this sense. For example, I'm on the board of an organization where we hire people for professional jobs, and 50% of them don't show up to an interview that they've committed to. And I hear this from businesses again and again and again. Or if it's a nice day, they expect not to see the person. What is that?
Well, sometimes when there's a challenging situation, notice I have my 10-second delay on here.
You have to.
It can be frustrating, yes, some of the factors that you've mentioned, but there's enough who are committed and passionate and would like to stay home and or not show up when it's a nice day. They do come in. They are very diligent in what they're doing. I belonged to a religious order for 9 years that their motto was, we work with the most abandoned. And I tend to have that idea that I want to bat 1,000. I want to reach every student. I want every student who walks into my classroom or walks in my office to pass the course to do well. And that's not going to happen. Nobody bats 1,000.
That's
and
true.
So I get a little hung up when someone doesn't do well and has the attitudes you're describing, and I take it personal.
Yeah.
And my colleagues, Jack, you can't reach everybody. Would you relax, for God's sakes? But that's part of my little problem is that, I want everybody to succeed, and they're not going to. So there's some folks, no matter what I do, are not going to be particularly motivated. And now that, for example, we're in online classes, I'm concerned about how some folks are going to perform very well, and other folks are going to have a little bit of a struggle. Now, I've been doing online for over 10 years as an adjunct, so I am well versed in it. Some of the technology, especially with the live presentations, I'm a little antsy about, but we'll get used to it, and we will provide a quality educational experience.
Well, I want to give you the other side of the corollary to some of my criticisms, and those are anecdotal. That's what I've heard, and the one that's not that's absolutely true is only 50% of the people show up for interviews, and I can't even imagine that. However,
I can't fathom that.
On Super Tuesday, we had here at the radio station a Super Tuesday night, and we did something unique. Of course, we covered the numbers, but what we did, we had from around the country representatives, since it was a Democratic primary, but we went with all the representatives in that particular state who were heads of the Young Democrats. They were all millennials. We had 2 millennials in the studio and about 7 who called in from around the country. And these young people were dedicated, knew their stuff, and 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 were flexible, reasonable, thoughtful, and passionate. And I was so impressed. So obviously, some of these generalizations and anecdotes that we hear, perhaps at the wrong end of a spectrum, as most things are. But these kids were impressive. They really, really, I'm calling them kids because they were in their 20s, or early 20s and mid 20s in some cases. They were impressive and they weren't naive. 1 or 2 were, but you would expect that. But they were impressive, Professor. And I guess you see that every day.
Yeah, that's what I'll say. There's some who are more challenging, but the majority keep me smiling and keep me motivated. And I'm also leery of the K word because they are young adults. They are not kids.
No, I know, and I get that, yes.
Use it. But on the other hand, there are plenty out there who are motivated and doing a great job and show up prepared. But that idea of 50% not showing up for a job interview, it's like, huh?
Yeah, no, and this is, I'm on the board of the organization, so I get the stats. And I was appalled. And there were other people on the board who run other major organizations. And they say, it's like that at my company, too, in my company. And I'll say, well, what is it? What is the mentality? Well, if it's a nice day, they want to enjoy their life. They don't care about, well, how much money do they want? Blah, blah, blah. Well, we can't lure them with benefits. They don't care about benefits. They think they're going to live forever, which I guess we all did when we were young. But the biggest thing was not showing up. I was aghast. And we're talking about social workers. We're not talking about, this wasn't a job to flip burgers. So these are professional positions. I
often wonder how much our parents thought about us.
Well, we were we were of the '60s. They had plenty to complain about. But
that my father would say, "Oh, you had no place to go, nothing to do," and I was sitting there reading a book or, working with my little stamp collection, or I was a quiet little kid. I wasn't really one of the boys, and I especially. When I was home for the summer from the seminary, my parents were very worried about me meeting a girl and losing my vocation. But I often wonder, what they thought of us, whether we were hopeless and then we turned out, well, halfway decent. But, I wondered if their perspective was just like ours today.
Very, very interesting. I'm sure it was. There were things we didn't do that they did. But a couple of other items, and we'll let you go a little early today. I've got, believe it or not, I've got to disinfect my front door for reasons I can't even get into now. But it is 9:35. We're talking with Professor Jack Breslin here on Radio Westchester. Professor, how do you think history will view what happened, what is going on now? As with all things, it will end. We'll get back to a semblance of normality, although we're hopeful that some things will change because of it, preparedness, some of the things that have come to life, the inadequacy of some hospitals. But you know what, for me, has been the biggest, as a prep for this is a long-winded question. We're learning one of the reasons the New York City schools and the New Rochelle's were reluctant to close, even as it put more people at risk, because they didn't want to put young kids at risk who depend on going to school to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a huge problem then in this country that we don't face.
Yeah, that perhaps this pandemic is a wake-up call to address some of these issues. I think from the media perspective, it will show how the media is a two-edged sword in that it will bring information, will bring people together, will help people cope with the crisis. Yet, as we started out in the beginning of the show, talking about how some misinformation and a bias towards showing panic and fear will cause that. Yet, I think perhaps this might help us in other emergencies that, for example, in responding to hurricanes, I think that there has been a better preparedness and looking to the future. So I think that is how history will show that we were not prepared for this, yet it woke us up in order to be more conscious of preparedness for this kind of a pandemic, but also fix problems that can be further exacerbated by a crisis like this. And yeah, I was shocked to hear that too, about how dependent a lot of folks are for that meal at school, and in some cases 2 meals at the school.
Well, it opened up a whole nother can of worms that I got into twice today, and people probably don't want to hear it 3 times, but there's an underlying problem there that we as a society don't look at, which is, and I always put it thus, well, why don't we give their parents more food stamps? Obviously, the food stamp program's inadequate. And then people will say, oh, we don't want to get into it, but their parents, And we're not talking about the people. Of course, some people are just at the wrong end of the economic ladder and nobody cares, and I get that. But they'll say, well, their parents go and spend it on things they shouldn't, or who's a drug addict, who's this or who's that. And then no one wants to go there because it raises social issues and cultural issues that political agendas get involved in. But the fact of the matter is, we either have a lot of terrible parents in our society or a lot of very poor parents who we need to give more food stamps to. But I guess there's no way to hold parents accountable, really. And that's just an honest statement, but we can't go there. Society doesn't want to go there.
Well, I think there's another issue that you and I and the other baby boomers took for granted, that on Long Island we were within walking distance, so we used to walk home for lunch.
Yes, we did.
She had to slap that together quick and get us back. And you just put it into your locker. But I'm wondering if today, if people do brown bag, or they can't because of the lack of sufficient refrigeration that we were concerned about.
No, that's
just
very
put it in the
true.
locker, whereas today it's like, oh no, you can't do that. It will go bad in the 3 hours that it sits in the locker.
No, but and I guess it's all good if you know they don't, if as long as you want food, they're going to give it to you. I don't think there's any means test, but it just seems that we shouldn't have kids going hungry. It's horrible. And I'm glad the schools are doing it, but also the schools were so concerned about it that they were willing to risk lives of people. And there has to be a deeper reason. We have to look at why these kids are hungry. And there's no reason in this society for children to go to school hungry. And whenever you say, because I've after interviewing people 15 years, there are the issues like the places you're not allowed to go, and this is one of them. Like when little Johnny's late for school 30 days in a row, and you want to talk to his parents, and we can't get the parent in. Let's not talk about that. No. But
yeah, because like on Iona mission trips, particularly when we went to Africa, one of the first questions I would ask them is, if we were out someplace and we didn't get lunch, would you be okay with that? Just having 2 meals a day. Oh, of course. Well, when it did happen, holy good Lord, and I said, hey, what did I tell you before you came? That we're going to be in situations where we might not get lunch. But, the idea that there are people, students and young people in the United States, that if they don't go to school, they don't get lunch, that's very disturbing.
From an investigative point of view, if you were covering this for a major newspaper, what would you be pursuing if you were asked to investigate why were we not prepared? What road would you go down?
First, I would look at how much materials that were needed would be stockpiled. And if there were budget cuts and layoffs, what did those people do? And if those people and those stockpiles had been in place, would the project have been handled better?
Mm-hmm.
And then what can be done in the future to fix that? But when you're investigating any kind of government corruption or government malfeasance, you have to get out to the grassroots. You don't talk to the folks who normally get in front of the microphones because they aren't necessarily going to give you the right answers. You got to get down to the folks who actually execute this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases are in those jobs, not by political appointment, by civil service. And a lot of them are very dedicated, but a lot of them are frustrated that they are not allowed to do their jobs properly or do not have the proper people power in order to be prepared.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's we see. There is a wonderful book. I guess I read it about 4 or 5, maybe longer, 10 years ago. They actually made it into a documentary, but only part of it, called Command and Control. No, and the other one was, I think, Ravenwood. America, to prepare for what they thought might be a third World War, obviously. We built all these silos and these, wonderful in their construct, but nothing's wonderful about a missile that can kill 50,000 people. But this wonderful effort to build nuclear weapons, to create silos, to put biscuits aside and secret caves all around the country for government and other people to hide. And the combination of the two books, I should say. But as these books finally came out, the biscuits were stale. The missiles were becoming inoperative. The people working on them got lazy. We found out there were several incidents of what are known as broken arrows. That's a nuclear weapon that winds up where it shouldn't or is in a plane that crashes. And I suspect that happened with this. That, there's something about doing contingency work that just isn't, it's not sexy and people don't follow up on it. That's all I got about something like that, Doc.
Yeah, that's what, in my post-seminary days, as I said, I've done a lot of jobs at bank teller and security guard and maintenance and so forth. And I remember walking around the sub-basements of Travelers Insurance in Hartford at 3 o'clock in the morning and seeing these green barrels. And those were civil defense to put water in.
Yeah.
Well, they were empty.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? If the big one drops, you're going to run around filling up these barrels full of water. Well, no, because they become stagnant. But then I would look at the biscuits and all this other stuff that was sitting there, and you would see, the little mice going in and out of them. And, well, we're going to eat this stuff?
Well, you know what I have noticed? We've done a better job, and this is one of the good things that came out of 9/11. And I'm not talking about the paranoia of the American people who, frankly, and this is where I tend to be a contrarian. We always talk about how brave we are as a country. I thought America became timid after 9/11. But what did help firms, and actually the first bombing of the World Trade Center, particularly Wall Street, they set up an apparatus where they could do work from everywhere, alternate trading sites, alternate locations, work from home. So if you pay someone and you make it a job and you have, and management is good, you can have proper contingency plans. But the fact that we didn't have it for a pandemic is quite shocking.
Yes, it certainly is. And I hope once it does calm down that the remedies will be restored and the preparedness will be there that apparently was not there.
So when do you think you'll be back to school, if you will? When do you think your students, or you think we're looking at next year, that there's we're going to go right out past spring break through the rest of the year not having classes? Is that a fair statement?
Well, I am not a spokesperson for Iona College. I can only go by what we've been told, is that we're on spring break this week. We're getting things ready to have online classes until after Easter, and then an assessment will be made. So we're just going to have to see how things go.
Okay, Professor.
I think we'll be able to do a fine educational system and work with the technology that we have.
Well, Doctor, thank you very much. Doctor, I don't call him doctor enough. Of course, he has a Ph.D. He's a professor of mass communications and ethics at Iona College. Thanks for taking the time to be with us today. I know you got to get ready for these classes before you go back upstate. So have a great day, sir.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right. Take care. We are going to cover just a couple of quick stories before we go that you might want to know. This is the New York Post that put it this way. Blockhead Texas GOP stalls relief bill, and it's not like the New York Post to throw a GOP under the bus and call him a blockhead. But an urgent bipartisan coronavirus relief package is being held up in the House by a single Republican congressman who threatens to delay it for another week. The billion-dollar package, which includes sick leave and free testing for affected Americans, was due to move to the Senate as soon as Monday night, but has been met with objection from Representative Louis Gohmert from Texas, a Republican from Texas. The House passed the bill in the early hours of Saturday before the chamber took a one-week break amid the escalating pandemic, but it later emerged that the legislation had technical issues that needed to be corrected. Speaker Nancy Pelosi, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, and the White House point person, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, agreed to the changes, but Gohmert has emerged as a surprise foil. The congressman, as first reported by NBC News, is insisting on reading aloud the changes, all 87 pages, and if one member stands in opposition, then the bill cannot automatically move to the Senate. The entire House would need to come back from their districts around the country to vote on the package. Gohmert said he was concerned that not enough time had been given to debate the merits of a billion-dollar relief bill. The Supreme Court's going to delay cases. The Supreme Court will postpone oral arguments scheduled for the month of March as concerns mount over the rapid spread of the coronavirus. In keeping with public health precautions, as said the Supreme Court spokesperson, recommended in response to COVID-19, the court is postponing the oral arguments currently scheduled for the March session. Now, the session, which was scheduled to go from March 23rd to 25, March 30 to April 1, would have included a case concerning President Trump's bid to shield his financial records from House Democrats in a dispute over subpoenas. The court will still hold its regularly scheduled conference Friday, although some justices may participate remotely. And as we announced early when it came out today, Canada borders are closing, but they do not include the United States. All right, let's take our last look at the weather. And the weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.org. It is 44, going to get up to 51 today. It looks like the rain has stopped. You may see another light drizzle or two, but it will give way to sunshine today, again getting up to the mid-50s. Tonight, clear skies. It'll get chilly, 34 degrees. Wednesday, mostly sunny, a high of 53. Now, Thursday, rain early, sadly, but then remaining cloudy. The high will be 54. And the real kicker is Friday. It'll be mostly cloudy with some scattered showers. Again, the good news, though, we'll have temperatures between 70 and 75. Chilling out at night to a tidy 46 degrees. We want to thank our friends, Aging Issues Management, and their partners, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne & Con, Dominic's Fine Cigars, pluginvirtualreality.com, and our friends at the Beachmont Tavern. They are delivering food. Call them up. Get those wings. Get those burgers. Have a nice shot of brandy or whatever it is you like. I'm Bob Marrone. You've been listening to Mornings with Bob Marrone, and we've been true. I am the only sole safe person sitting here in the station at the station. And if you're wondering what it looks like, we'll show you. That's outside into the parking lot. And there's no one out there. There's one taxi cab, couple of cars. And maybe today I've seen a total of 18 people in 4 hours, actually 5 hours at the New Rochelle train station. So people seem to be following the rules. Please stay healthy. Remember to wash your hands. Use your Purell. I'm going to wash mine in a little while after I clean that window. Use your Purell. Don't go out unless you need to go out. And keep listening to this and other news outlets and make sure you stay up to date. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to take an early leave to take care of some maintenance here. This is Radio Westchester. Thank you for listening. I'm Bob Marrone.